Joe Biden's economic recovery plan, the Build Back Better Act, is hanging in the balance. What started as a $3.5 trillion omnibus package is now shrinking by the day. Rather than fight for the popular provisions, Biden is negotiating on what we can cut. But it's not the Republicans who have forced him into this corner, it's corporate Democrats. Why is it that when a popular progressive agenda is on the line, the response of liberals is to compromise to weaken to a weaker position? Why are Democrats negotiating against themselves? Do you think that that is a failure of the Biden administration to actually fight for their own priorities? Yeah, so this has been annoying. I mean, we haven't really talked about it much. We haven't talked about it much at all. But just like what's happening in Congress, we've had like a stalemate there for weeks and weeks, and nothing seems to be, well, nothing was really happening until like what seems to be the inevitable, that we start compromising, and the only way we compromise is towards the corporate Democrat side, right? Towards the side of helping the American citizens less, right? Giving them less opportunity. So I want to talk about like that this whole agenda, and should we expect anything better, and maybe even look into the future of the Biden administration and see like what can we expect. I mean, if they fail here, right? What comes next? So, sorry, Spectre info.
I'm sorry?
Your opening statement?
Oh, yeah, so I think there's a couple of different problems here. Well, their names are Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, frankly. Like, we just can't get anything passed, and it's not just this bill, it's other bills that they're basically holding the American people hostage and, like, just refusing to compromise anywhere left, pulling us further right. I think it's absurd that West Virginia, like compared to California, for example, which usually goes blue, um, the amount of power that you have when voting for a senator in California is about 70 times less than that in West Virginia. So if we actually had like equal representation, I'd never have to hear Joe Manchin's name again. He'd be irrelevant. It'd be fine. But unfortunately, in this country, we do have a congressional system that was set up by slave owners to make sure that power is distributed to slave states. So um, I don't really know how to get around it. Nobody is going to primary Joe Manchin in West Virginia from the left. They might primary him from the right and win. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, I understand it's better to have him than a Republican. In Kristen Sinema's case, I think that we could possibly primary her, get away with that. But yeah, as things are right now, these bills are going to continue getting gutted. Nobody's going to get the help that they need, and Donald Trump is probably going to win again in 2024 if he runs as a result of all this. So, yeah, we're fucked.
Tidings of joy. Thank you for that. For starting us off on the on the right foot. Love to see it. Jason Society.
So I talk a lot about cinema even in my streams because, well, I'm in Arizona. And my position on this is that Biden has done quite a lot to try to advocate for his policies. However, he has stopped short of spending time in the states where these problematic senators are. They're not quite a problematic pen, but they are problematic senators. And I think that when Joe Manchin came out earlier this week talking about how, or it was leaked that he would potentially leave the Democratic Party over the spending bill, the reconciliation bill, I was kind of like, good riddance, dude, because you are already acting as a Republican. What's the difference? It doesn't matter to me if they got a D behind their name, if they're doing the work for the Republicans. They're effectively a mole. They're effectively a turncoat living in the party that they want to eviscerate. He's got to be aware that there's political disadvantages that are coming next cycle for most of the Democrats if these bills don't get passed the way we want them to. So it seems to me he's effectively trying to damage the party. I do think Biden needs to go further. I also think that part of the issue that we have is that the one bill that would actually help us get over some of these humps and guarantee things for the future for us is the voting rights legislation. And I think without that, even if we get a pared down reconciliation package and infrastructure package through, we're going to come across some serious problems in the election cycles moving forward if we don't do anything on this voting rights issue. So regardless of how this pans out, problematic.
Yeah, I got it. I
maybe.
got it.
I think that we're going to run into some serious troubles come next election season because, quite honestly, we haven't done enough of the work. We have obstructionist senators. Biden is not hitting them hard enough. I think that they should all be threatened with primaries. Like Sinema and Manchin should both be threatened with primaries. We should have DNC mobilizers in those states actively pushing for primaries. I think Ruben Gallegos is actually gearing up to run against Sinema in the next election cycle here, which I'm excited about. So I think overall, we're in shit shape, and unless Joe is going to start going into these states and actively campaigning for the policies he wants and putting their feet to the fire, we're screwed. But it all relies around him. The other probably more, I guess, conspiratorial take I have on it is Joe Biden has never been this progressive in his entire political career. And I have to question whether he really wants these policies or if he's using them as controlled opposition to pare down the policies anyways, because this isn't something that he's ever advocated for on such large scale. So to me, it seems like a good excuse to say, oh, well, we couldn't get it done because of these guys. Maybe he didn't want it to begin with, because otherwise I think he'd be fighting a lot harder in those states to get it done. That's my take.
Thank you for that. And I think you have interesting take there. Plenty to work with. Next, we'll get with. Could you help me out, Jason? Side is a new person. I don't. What? Not familiar.
I think he's a pan that's a little problematic sometimes.
Might be. All right. No, that sounds about right. Go ahead, Pan.
Yeah, so personally, I don't support the Build Back Better Act. However, I don't think it's Biden's fault that it's not passing. The claim that, I don't know what you guys expect him to do. He's not the god, and 52 senators oppose his bill. That is a majority in the Senate. He's trying. The reason he's compromising with them is because he wants to get something passed. He wants to get closer to his, as close to his agenda goals as possible. But unfortunately for him, he can't do that right now because he doesn't have the amount of votes he needs. I think that in moral philosophy, there's a saying, ought implies can. I don't think he can do it, so I don't think he is failing at something. This might change in 2022 because if he does well with midterms, that will change the makeup of the Senate and the House. So I think he would have more culpability after midterms. But I think as of right now, he's probably doing the best he can. When it comes to why are Democrats negotiating against themselves, the answer to that is because Democrats are not a monolith. Believe it or not, some Democrats have differing ideas on what policy positions are good and which are bad. So it makes sense that the ones who think that the Build Back Better plan would be better if it was smaller are using their political capital to achieve that goal. If I would imagine for everyone else in this panel, if there was if instead of Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, we had two very progressive policy members in the Senate, I would imagine you guys would want them to use their political capital to push the Bring Back Better bill further to the left. So I don't think that this is a principled stance. I think you guys are being a little bit pragmatic in expecting people who disagree with you to go along just for the sake of unity.
Interesting. Oh boy. You said something that we're gonna make content out of that in a second. All right. Let's go vote Rice.
I think that Joe Manchin himself said it best when he said that Congress needs to spend $2, $3, $4 trillion over a 10-year period on infrastructure. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and those jobs aren't coming back. They need a place to work. And that was right before he lost the election, or he won his election. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think the Democrats are just in the same spot that they're always in, which is chasing their own profit and chasing their own, best interest instead of the best interest of the country. So,
okay, thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, your question reminded me of an Onion article that I read, and the title was "Democrats Sick of Being Blamed for Cowardice on Issues They Actually Just Don't Care About." And I think that's kind of what it comes down to is commitment and what Democrats are actually committed to. And I think with your question, you kind of answered it when you called them corporate Dems, right? I mean, that's really what they're committed to. So yeah, I don't think it's exactly a failure on Biden. I feel like most progressives understood the ramifications of electing Biden, and many of us were shouting at the top of our lungs that this was going to happen. He was constantly talking about like bipartisan. Wow, can't say that right now.
Bipartisanship.
Thank you. Yes, during the election and constantly after. And yeah, so I also agree that Trump's a real threat, but before we go there, we are literally 1 year away from midterms. And unless Biden does something other than what is viewed as a letdown, we're going to lose the very small majority that we have. And so I think it's very important that we, you know, have some major legislation pass.
All right, open to the panel.
All right, I have a few things here actually. So first of all, Biden can't trash Manchin. It's just not going to happen. Because if Manchin did become a Republican, that would think of this as harm reduction, right? If Manchin becomes a Republican, we lose the little bit of leverage that the Democratic Party has on him, which is the fact that due to the fact he's in a swing state, he gets tons of money from the DNC in order to run again. And I don't know if any of you have been to West Virginia, but the idea that anybody further left than Joe Manchin is going to win against a Republican there is a pipe dream. They won't even get through the primary. It's not possible. That's why nobody's doing it. The polling data is very clear. They just aren't that far left, and they think that Democrats are socialist and they're highly reactionary. I don't think this is Biden's fault. I think that Biden tried to put SBA loans for co-ops and unionized shops into either the SBA bill, into the reconciliation bill, where it was infrastructure package. It was one of those bills. He's trying to get through policy that's further left than any president that we've had in the past, and a lot of it is due to the fact that he's basically just stealing Bernie's platform because he knows it's popular. As to whether or not he's doing it because he knows it won't get through, I think that that's useless to speculate on. Now, what we could do is Kristen Sinema's constituency is a little bit further left, and a lot of them are very disappointed with her due to the fact that she kind of pulled a little bit of a Pete Buttigieg. She could very easily be primaried. And I would love it if it was Joe Manchin instead, because he's a coal baron that opposed even a carbon tax, but it's just not going to happen in Appalachia.
Anyway,
Didn't Paula Jean Swearingen try to run against him, primary him? Wasn't she in West Virginia?
How'd it go?
Not great, not horrible though. I mean, she gained ground where people didn't think there was any. So I mean, she is showing that there's. I think here's the problem. I think that if you frame something as a democratic policy with people, they're going to take a polarized view of it. If you present a policy that you don't frame as a democratic policy, but just a policy, I think you have different results. People will react differently to that. And the case in point is, I don't know if you ever watched the old video with where I think it was Jordan Klepper walking around talking to people about whether they like the ACA or Obamacare. And when he brought up the ACA and went through the policies, they loved it. As soon as he said Obamacare, all of a sudden they didn't like anything to do with it. So I think messaging can play a role in that, and I think that messaging could be pivotal if somebody did to try to primary Manchin. I think it's possible. I also think the DNC could put pressure on him because he was talking about, if he were to leave the party, which he later came out and said that's total BS. He's not doing that. If he were to leave the party, he wouldn't be a Republican. He said that he'd be an American independent, at least according to the leaks that we've received. So I don't know how that necessarily would advantage the Republicans. It might put him in a rogue type situation, but it also might mobilize, the Dems to look at other swing states where we have a possibility of winning there. So fine, Manchin, cool. We just won't support you. You can run. We'll put up, a primary opponent that might lose, but you're also not getting any DNC funding to run. And then we're going to divert that to other swing states where we may have more of a chance of winning or taking a spot from a conservative Democrat such as Kirsten Sinema.
So
I think that's totally viable.
Yeah, here's the
I wanna,
thing.
hold on, I want to point out the fact that, so you said, like, let's say he did go to independent, he would still have to caucus with one of the parties. So that literally means nothing. It's just posturing at that point.
He can't get the money to run as an independent
Right.
without taking money from like either the RNC or the DNC. And that's, again, the leverage that we have on him. That's why he actually sat down with Bernie to negotiate last week, because he knows that he has to fund his campaign and that he's like being a shoe in the rock of the party right now. The issue is that people in West Virginia don't like Manchin because he's a Democrat. They don't like him because he's a Republican. They like him because they think he saved their coal jobs, right? And that's the biggest thing that these people care about for whatever reason. You know that he didn't actually save their jobs. That industry is dying. None of these people are retiring coal miners. I know that, but they don't. And they love him for it. And like, name recognition in West Virginia is one of the biggest things that will get you by. That's why Robert Byrd was a Democratic senator for nearly 50 years there, right? Like, I'm sorry, this is just not going to happen. Our resources are much better spent with Kristen Sinema because progressives do not even control the messaging in West Virginia. Fox News does. So there's no way that we can frame this in a way that they're going to listen to us.
Well, I mean, we had to put some messaging in there in the first place, and that's kind of the problem too. They didn't get any messaging at all for the last election. I was talking to what's his face, Freems, about it, and he said that he didn't see hardly any Democrat ads, and there was no Democrats that came to the state and said anything. And when they did come to the state, they said learn to code. Like, what fucking, like, help is that? And then if you show up and you want to talk about a $15 an hour minimum wage and like all these things, it's like, yeah, that's good, but we're talking to coal miners to make 120 grand a year. Like, these aren't shit jobs as far as pay is concerned. Like, there's shit on your body and there's shit on your life, but like, they pay really well. So like, people don't care about $15 an hour and they're making 120 grand a year. They just want to make sure they can make 120 grand a year. And so like the idea that we're going to be able to like ever be able to sway anybody in West Virginia or like, a growing section of the dying parts of this country without some kind of like massive jobs program, massive like infrastructure programs is insane. So like, the Democrats were elected in on this mandate of making these changes and they're doing nothing again. Like, of course they're not going to vote for Democrats. Look at what they do. They just squabble. They don't do shit.
Let's go to Amanda and Pam.
Oh no, I don't have anything to say yet.
Okay, Pam.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious about what you guys think the total price of the bill would be if instead of Manchin there was a Republican, because my money is it would be much lower than like the $2 trillion that Biden's talking about now. So I hear all this like, oh well, he's acting just as a Republican, so like, what's the point of even supporting him or caring for him? Well, I think that if you want a larger Build Back Better plan bill, well, if you're not going to get a larger one by having a Republican, you're going to get a significantly smaller one. So
Yeah,
I don't really understand this.
connect-
There's
No,
no
I-
difference
I-
that I hear.
I agree
Part of-
with you.
part of me
No, I
wa-
absolutely agree with you.
Part of me
Because-
wants to hang them out to dry. Like, so fine if like, and that's awful, right? Because there's going to be so many people like caught up into this, but like,
Yeah.
we need to stop giving them an out by negotiating.
Yeah, pretty much. And doing it in good faith as if they're going to return the favor. And the craziest thing is that like, the Federal Reserve has asked Congress to spend $4.3 trillion more in order to make up a deficit we're currently facing with treasury bills. Like, they're asking them to spend more money so that we don't get into a banking bind in the middle of the year next year, and they won't spend the money. It's absolutely insane. Like, we're heading for a fiscal disaster. The resolution for it is more money being printed and more money being spent. And what better way to spend it than on infrastructure? Like, it's one of the best returns on investment that you can make. It's what literally makes the country the country. It's what makes the market the market. And what makes the economy is the ability for people to get shit from one place to another. And like, if we can't do that, and we're increasingly not able to do that in this country, like, what are we? Like, you know what I mean? We're a third world country again. It's crazy. It's crazy to me.
Well, for Appalachia, it's not again in parts of it. Like, that's the point, is that these people are already done with Democrats because they get left behind every time that they put their trust in them. I don't know. Like, if you want to have another Republican senator, that's fine. I agree with Pan. It would result in a worse bill. Because, again, we have leverage on Manchin due to the fact that he needs money from the DNC in order to be able to run in that state. If he's a Republican, he's just going to be able to go full-blown mask-off right-winger. And you will get nothing.
Okay.
So do you want something or do you want nothing?
Okay.
Do you want harm reduction or not?
Oh wow! All right. Now I really want to fight. I like what was it? Jason Society said. Like, if we I think Democratic leadership loves this kind of stalemate, right? Like, I think Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer love as it stands, right? Because then you have this guy Manchin who can always be the bad guy, right? And he's the reason why we can't, like, all those things we promised, we really wanted to. This time we're going to make it happen. But mean old Manchin won't let it happen. But of course, he's the linchpin of everything. And so if he were to go, then things would be worse, right? So please elect us again. That's part's important. Despite the fact that we've not delivered a fucking thing to you, right? And elect Manchin again, right? Like, let's make sure that he's protected. And how do we protect him? By giving him literally everything he wants. That's how we do it, right? And that's how you run a party. Instead of saying that, all right, we have an issue, right? We have these senators and certain Congress people who are in our way. Why don't we expand, right? Why look into the future and go for a very narrow majority, right? That can fall apart one way or other. If someone fucking dies, it falls apart, right? Why aren't we looking to expand the party and take some Senate seats? That's exactly what we need to do. That's what it is. But
do you think they're not trying to do that? Like, the DNC definitely wants to increase their share of senators.
You would think so, but their entire outlook, their entire stance, is that of a party that's not going to grow, right? And that they seem to not. I don't see what they're doing to convince new voters in new states, right? Like, what is the sell right now? Like try to sell me as a voter in a state that has swung red on the DNC, on Democrats. Why should I vote for them when we put them in power and I'm just looking at what they're accomplishing and they can't literally accomplish anything. They can't deliver anything. So I don't know how they move the ball forward or if they're even trying.
Biden got you that $2,000 check, though. Remember the $1,400, $2,000 check?
No, nobody remembers. That's the sad part.
Right.
No, that bought us nothing.
I
And
can
it was
guarantee
also-
all Georgians remember this, actually, considering it was the entire, like, what we ran on during the runoff election. I mean, when I was calling voters, that's pretty much our entire messaging and was wrapped up into the $2,000 check.
But what did they get?
$2,000.
No, they got $1,400, buddy.
Well, 600 from Trump, so I don't know.
Yeah, that was the rationale. Trump already gave you 600, so that's what we meant. Like,
it's not how it was messaged. All Georgians thought they would get an additional $2,000. Like,
yeah, but that's what I'm saying is they're not remembering it fondly. They're thinking that they were lied to, and all that it was an extra $600. It wasn't going to break the bank. It was absolutely absurd that we did that. But anyways, like I just don't understand what the obsession with Manchin is. I said that Kristen Sinema is very easy to primary. I don't like him either, but that's not where you're going to have success.
Agreed. Cinema's ratings are so low right now. She's like, what I think last time I looked was 19% approval rating, or like 19% support
among Democrats.
Rating. Among Democrats.
Yeah,
but she's not.
She actually has a higher. She has a higher approval rating than the other Democrats.
But by 3%.
No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't right now.
And he goes on this, like, the poll he's using 3% other more than the other one, and he hangs his hat on this. Amazing. Hold on,
I did have one more thing. You said that we were going to give Manchin. We gave Manchin everything that he wanted. If we had done that, the bill would be passed. Like, it'd be over. So, like, obviously there is some kind of negotiation still occurring here. Like, and the idea that we're just going to, like, stamp our feet and be like, we're not even going to play ball with you, go play with the Republicans, and that we're going to allow, like, conditions for people to get worse over some kind of ideological grandstanding is absurd to me. When we can just primary Sinema, and have things made better there. Why are you so obsessed with Joe Manchin? Why does it have to be Joe Manchin? Why can't it be the other one?
It can be both.
It would have to be.
It can't be.
Chew gum at the same time.
That's not what any polling data indicates. You have to be realistic. This is ridiculous.
I think you guys think your policies are more attractive in West Virginia than they are. Like, I don't think the average West Virginian is going to be supportive of most of these policies. So, of course, like, there's a reason they vote for Joe Manchin. Like, I'm
But
not
we
actually
talked
sure what his
about
approval
that. This
rating
is
is.
Joe
poor
actually,
messaging by
Manchin.
Democrats. It's
Well, the thing
poor
is,
messaging by Democrats. That's
Manchin
why.
actually represents his district, whereas Cinema does not. She would be much easier to target. I agree with that. I think that we can also,
But
target both of them. But I also understand that, like, when you're considering targets and stuff like that, you want to, like, utilize your resources really well. And I think at this point, trying to throw it all behind Manchin in a primary is just completely pointless
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
actually represents his district.
And on top of that, like, the idea that we can control the messaging somehow in West Virginia is absurd. Again, you don't control the messaging in West Virginia as Democrats. QAnon and Fox News does. Like, that's just the way it is. I wish that we could change it. We can't. Like, it is. The Southern strategy worked. Like, Nixon pulled it off. Like, that's
Yeah, but
not changing anytime
tell me-
soon.
West Virginia was a northern state, though. Like, I mean, you got to remember they left because they didn't want slavery. Like, you know what I mean? They're not a slaveholding state. First of all, second of all, like, like, it's easy to say that Fox News controls the messaging when their opposition is dead air. Like, there's nothing. Like, if you give them something, I'm sure that you would get the support. Like, I mean, like the Redneck Rebellion is a West Virginia thing, right? Like the state of the movement of leftism in the United States, as far as workers' rights are concerned, started in West Virginia. Like, this is, like, it's not like out of the question.
There was
West
that
Virginia
teacher
could-
strike.
again,
Remember the series of teacher strikes that happened? I
Right.
think that started in West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. And there's coal miners that are holding up a train for years, for
Yeah.
months and months, that Bernie Sanders went and campaigned with a couple of times there. I mean, like, that kind of stuff, like, those are the people that the Democratic Party should be trying to attract, but they don't try to attract them. Like, they're not after that segment of the population anymore. And that's really pathetic. Like, we don't have representation as working class people in this country. That's the biggest problem. But, like, to take a step off of this, talk about Cinema. Cinema's at the point where she's polling so low, she knows she's going to lose. She's working on making sure that she gets the cushy job that she wanted when she, like, gets out of office. Like, that's all she cares about. Like, there's no, it's just dead air. Like, I mean, like talking to her is absolutely useless.
So regardless about whether or not you guys should get more messaging in West Virginia, I agree that probably should start doing it, but this is going to be a long-term plan. Trump won the state by over 40%, right? This isn't going to be something that happens in the next election or two. This is going to be probably at least a generation before you start seeing some effects. So this, I don't know why you guys are talking about this as though it's anything but a long-term solution. In the short term, it's not going to be helpful.
Because if Joe Biden and this plan pass, the amount of infrastructure work that's going to be being done with federal money in West Virginia is going to make 1 million jobs in West Virginia. And that, like, those are going to take people that are currently either unemployed or underemployed and give them good, like, union wage jobs to go to work.
But if
Like,
we could get just
that's immediate.
And I also don't think that we're positioning well enough that these green energy jobs that we're talking about could have a major impact on the jobs and people in West Virginia, where coal plants have closed down, where they can go into jobs making similar money to what they've made in these coal plants.
Right.
They're going to go away. We know that they're going to go away, and the part of it that pisses me off, right, is you don't have to create messaging against Joe Manchin. Okay, let's say you don't do that. What you can do is create messaging for the policies. Right? For the policies. For the avenue of, hey, we want to create more jobs for you. Here's how we're going to do it. We know coal is dying out. We're seeing it. We're seeing it actually physically happen. And there's eventually not going to be much we can do about it. It's dying technology, you know? And we have to message something to them. And Joe Manchin isn't going to message anything but what will line his pockets. I don't know how people are saying he's doing the work of his constituents. He's doing the work of what lines his own pockets, what lines his family's pockets, and then he's trying to sell people on this idea that he's being, moderate and he's, trying to look out for our children's future by not putting us in debt, while at the same time he's fleecing his own constituents in his own state, both in the coal industry and in the pharmaceuticals industry. So I don't understand how we shouldn't be in there talking these policies. Because if you want to move Manchin, maybe you don't have to critique him. All you've got to do is put enough messaging out there about the good policies, the jobs policies, the things we want to do for unionized workers, that type of stuff. If the sentiment grows for those policies in his district and he can see that, maybe he changes. Again, I think that will be the test, though. But if you build people up to expect and want these things in his state, then he's going to have to pivot for that. If he doesn't pivot for that, then yeah, maybe he is prime for a primary. Maybe he is.
Yeah,
But
from
we
the
need
right.
to at least do the messaging first and get out there what the policies are first. And we're not doing that. We could talk about who controls the messaging, but again, if we aren't messaging at all, of course Fox News and QAnon are going to control the messaging. We aren't doing the work. We're not doing the work there.
How many
You,
people?
And we have a
you
responsibility
understand
to
that
do that if we want to see those changes.
no matter
You go
Go
first,
ahead,
No, Spectre, you go first.
yeah, no matter how hard you try to control the messaging in West Virginia, it is as easy as they are communist. They are going to put you in breadlines. You are going to
but-
not have a job anymore, and then they just listen to everything. Like, I'm
Wasn't it in
sorry.
West Virginia that the Soviets literally paid for a bridge that the United
Yes,
States refused
yes,
to
I
rebuild? Like,
agree. And I also know about the Battle of Blair Mountain very well. I know that they have had revolutionary action in the past, but I would invite any internet socialist to go on a picket line and start talking to people about socialism. You will quickly discover that 50% of unionized workers voted for Trump. Like, these people don't necessarily agree with our politics just because they want to improve their wages and conditions.
Okay,
But
Spectre.
I don't
They
think they
aren't
disagree.
getting the politics. They aren't getting the policies. The information is not getting to them.
And there's no way to
They're
get it
low
to them.
information voters.
There is
Wait,
actually. So like the one thing that like I think we need to do a lot more as Democrats is continually invest into states and continually knock doors and continually educate voters and not just do this during primaries and presidential elections. It is just absolutely crazy to me that even like during local elections, when you're knocking doors, you're not really talking to them about anything. It's more like, hey, here, go vote. Here's this person, have a sticker, can I put a sign in your yard? Even the way that we talk to voters now during midterm and general election is very surface level. Like when you're making phone bank calls and stuff, most of the time it's like, read off of a script, and there's no real connection made between voters and the people that are calling them.
Okay. So, all right, multiple things. One, do you guys know? I'm sure one of you, at least one of you knows. Do you guys know how much of a percentage coal mining is in West Virginia, like in terms of jobs?
It's small.
Can anyone guess?
I don't know what it is.
It's utterly tiny.
3%.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, in the 1% range, 2% maybe.
It's so in 2017 it was 2.5%. It might be 3% now, but I'm doubting it because in 2019, 13,988 people were in West Virginia's coal industry, and yeah, and I think people don't understand this. I think people think that it's a massive part of their economy. Right? It's literally the only thing you ever hear about that state. It's the only thing, and so it leads you to believe, wow, this just like everyone's neighbor is a coal miner, right? Like, of course, why wouldn't they be focusing on this? It's not. There's more to this state than coal mining jobs. I just want to put that out there. I just leave that alone. But beyond that, my focus isn't on Joe Manchin. Like I'm saying, we need to expand our horizons here. And I haven't got heard an answer to my question as to what is the sell. We're going into midterms next year. What is the sell for those individuals? Why shouldn't the Democrats lose the Senate? Like what? Who are we convincing? I'm sure we can look up who is up for re-election next time, with states up for grabs. But like, what is the sell here? If we can't deliver this or something stripped down that doesn't have the economic impact that people are looking for, like, what is the sell?
So just one thing, the idea that just because the mining industry doesn't make up a large percentage of employment doesn't mean that it's important to the people of West Virginia. That's not really how it works. Like, their economy has been backed on it for years. It is the highest paying job that pretty much you can get, because if you look at the other sectors, these other jobs just don't pay well at all.
Actually, that's not true. There's actually, I'm looking at like the numbers right now, and it looks like the number one industry in West Virginia at the moment is aviation. Like, they're building parts for Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Gulfstream, Airbus, GE Aviation as like primary.
Yeah, and we're looking at different data because mine is government jobs.
Yeah, so I mean, outside of government jobs, right? And so like,
No.
and the average person here makes $37,959, like, which is like, nearly the median income. Like, so like, there are other industries that have good jobs that are growing in West Virginia. I think the big overarching issue is, again, like you say, there's zero messaging to combat the Republican messaging, and like nobody wanted Hillary Clinton. Let's just face the facts. Like the reason she was unpopular is because she told these people to learn how to code, and that's just fucking insulting. And in fact, I think you were one of these platforms wouldn't even allow you to say learn to code on it for a while. But the idea that you can't attract voters in West Virginia by simply messaging but also doing stuff. And I guess messaging is they're probably the most sensitive, and there's other parts of the country too that are very sensitive to the messaging and what actually gets done. Because if you're sitting around waiting for what they message that they're going to do to happen so that you can eat, you know what I mean? You're going to be hungry for a long time, and they know that. They've been probably starving for a while. So the idea that we can't do anything about this is just stupid. Put more stuff in the bill for his state. It's as simple as that. Let's get everybody else on board to fucking get the thing passed. It doesn't make sense to me why we're even having this opposition from Republicans. What do Republicans want to do in their states? In Texas here, they cut off the UI, the extended UI, and the state lost $2 billion the following month because there was less economic activity. The unemployment rate went up. People are hiring less because there's less stimulus. It's so obvious that stimulus is what it takes to fix an economy. And right now the economy is broken. What are we doing?
I mean, yeah, if we could just snap our fingers and get the stuff passed, that'd be great. And if we could actually do messaging in Appalachia, that'd be fantastic. I grew up across the mountain from these people, dude. You're not going to be able to sell them on Keynesian economics because they think that it leads to communism. It's just that simple. And now that with the internet and radicalization and polarization moving them further and further to the other side every day, I just don't. You can't show me polling data that indicates that anybody further left of Joe Manchin would win in West Virginia. There's one poll that the methodology sucked on that said that they would support this overwhelmingly, but the rest of them are pretty clear. They're not for this bill. They're not for any kind of social programs. Your resources are just going to be better spent getting rid of Kristen Sinema. It's that simple.
I want to push back on that. Well, I do agree that going after Manchin is going to be a difficult thing and may take more than one cycle. I think it's important that we do that, but I also think it's important that we pull some money away from Manchin and show that it doesn't mean we have to abandon him completely, but we should pull some money away and allocate those resources in places like Florida, where Marco Rubio's up for re-election, and Val Demings actually has a really good shot of beating Marco Rubio. You could look at Iowa, where Chuck Grassley is up for re-election, and he's got a contender from the left there, where it's possible to make some inroads. And then you've got Kentucky with who is it, Booker running against Rand Paul. Rand Paul's been such a shit. It's possible that Booker could pull out Kentucky if we put enough money into those places. So I think there are some places where we could redirect our resources to in order to have a better shot at winning some of these seats, which would then give us a bigger majority. And I think that the way you would market that, the way you could sell people on that is say, listen, we've got some really conservative senators right now on the Democratic side that, while they are a stronghold for us in those areas, are not pushing the policies we want. In order to gain the power that we need to overcome filibusters, to overcome these obstacles, we need more Democrats in office. These policies can work, these plans can work, but it's going to take you guys getting out and voting, and then encourage and put tons of marketing and tons of messaging out in these areas where we do have a potential to win. But I think what you have to say is, listen, we work in a democracy. Our party is a Democratic party, and we have to contend with the people that we currently have. I agree that Kyrsten Sinema, we could even point out that, hey, you know what? We're going to primary Kyrsten Sinema over this shit, and we want this stuff to pass. I think that Biden should do everything they need
in the middle.
I gotta push back on this. One, Kyrsten Sinema isn't up for re-election in 2022, right?
2024.
Yes, 2024. So, if you're saying that moving West Virginia is a long-term plan, well, then Kyrsten Sinema, if she even fucking runs, because she might not, she literally might not care about running, right? I don't think that's a path to success. We are stuck with Sinema. We are stuck with Manchin. That's why I'm not talking about even moving them. These two clearly do not care. They're clearly shameless their goals, right? So, like, let's talk about moving the needle in other places, right? So, like, I have the full list. I'm going to read it out loud right here, okay? Here's what's up in 2022. Alabama, Richard Shelby. Not much luck there. Alaska, Lisa Murkowski. Arizona, Mark Kelly, right? The one who was already playing ball, so all right. Arkansas, John Boonsman. California, Alex Padilla. Colorado, Michael Bennett. Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal. Florida, Marco Rubio. Georgia, Raphael Warnock. Why would they stick around? Hawaii, Brian Schatz. Idaho, Mark Crapo. That was mixed with that. All right, sorry. Illinois, Tammy Duckworth. Indiana, Todd Young. Iowa, Chuck Grassley. Kansas, Jerry Morin. Kentucky, Rand Paul. Louisiana, John Neely Kennedy. Maryland, Chris Van Hollen. Missouri, Roy Blunt. Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto. New Hampshire, Mag Hassan. New York, Chuck Schumer. North Carolina, Richard Burr. North Dakota, John Hoeven. Ohio, Rob Portman. Oklahoma, James Lackford. Oregon, Ron Wyden. Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey. South Carolina, Tim Scott. South Dakota, John Thune. Utah, Mike Lee. Vermont, Patrick Leahy. Washington, Patty Murray. And Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. Is there not anywhere in here, and I can just send you the link too,
Yes.
that
Please do.
is, yeah, sure, that is movable, that we can...
Yeah, 4 of them.
Okay.
I've got, like this. I'm glad we're going here. This was going to be my point. Rather than wasting time with this pipe dream that we're going to somehow like get somebody further left in Mansion in Appalachia, why don't we just flip other seats that we can flip other places and make it to where if he like throws a tantrum and refuses to vote with us, we can say, well, fuck off. We have a majority without you. Like that would be the actual ideal. Like if you really want to know where to put like resources for the midterms coming up. So we have Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin that all appear to be swing states for the senatorial races. So that's 8 seats that we could potentially flip. 8 places that are better spent, like actually spending our time and energy. Then I hate Joe Manchin too. But the obsession with like de-seating him, like it's going to somehow do more good than just getting more progressives in Congress elsewhere is absurd to me. Like just make him irrelevant and then get rid of Sinema in 2024 if you really want to be spiteful. Like fine. Like, but this is probably a better strategy. I would hope that we agree.
I mean, Rubio's seat's kind of close, isn't it? Like he's running against Val Demings, I think, right?
Yeah.
So
she's
that's
got
like
a
one
good shot
seat
of winning. And if you look at
Does she?
even though they voted for Trump, they also voted for a $15 minimum wage.
Right.
So
right.
swaying people there, especially in that district, I think Val Demings could pull it off.
So I mean that would help. That would be a big help. So maybe we spend more time there. But again, like now is the time to shine. Like Florida's another state that needs massive infrastructure change. Like I think the city of Miami had 9 freshwater aquifer wells that they were using to feed the supply for the entire city. They're down to 2 because the 7 of them have been poisoned by salt water permanently, and they'll never be able to recover them. So like they're gonna need some either like water trucked in, piped in, or like desalination plant or something soon. Like, and that does nothing about the rising water level there. So like, where's the infrastructure? The condo that collapsed. Like where's the infrastructure bill? Like let's get that going and maybe put a good name on Democrats and like government spending on things because like God knows we need it.
So like, one thing I wanted to point out too, when we're looking at the midterms, you do have 5 Republicans that are not running for re-election. You got Richard Burr in North Carolina, who's not running. If I remember right, we had a decent showing in North Carolina last time, but we didn't pull it out. But that may be a probability. Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, we could probably get his seat. Rob Portman in Ohio is not running for re-election. I'm not sure where Ohio's at right now, honestly. But then you've got Richard Shelby in Alabama and Roy Blunt in Missouri, So even in those places where people aren't running for re-election, that means there's not going to be as much name recognition for those seats. And that might be an avenue that we could take in order to facilitate some growth in the Democratic Senate, our side on the Democratic Senate. So absolutely, I think that's a good... I'm not averse to that, Spectre, at all. I think those are good ideas. I think definitely putting resources into some of these states, especially where seats are being vacated, it's a good idea. I think you can still put pressure on Sinema and Manchin, especially if we win some of these seats in the midterms. I think you'd have a huge ability to put pressure on them because now they're not
They have no
they're not in the
power.
position of power that they're currently in, right? So I do think you're right that when you change the dynamic of the Senate, you bring more Democrats into the Senate, it then nullifies the power that they currently have, right? And I think that's what you're speaking to, Spectre. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's just basically like, why would you try and do the hard thing and spend all your energy there when there's a simpler solution? And like, I understand that there's also like, we have to make sure that we don't lose any Senate seats, right? But that's every time. Like, make it to where when these people say, I don't support that bill, it's like, that's cute, Manchin. Why don't you go join the Republicans then? Because you can say that if you have a bigger majority, but you can't say that when we have the split that we do right now, because it will get so much worse. We will get so much less.
Has
And
the
I feel
I
like
don't.
the one consistent thing that I constantly hear is, or constantly notice, is that I feel like Democrats just in general are completely directionless, and that there is no clear agenda that we have. We don't even have a platform that I mean, we obviously have the DNC platform, right? But we don't actually have a platform that anyone agrees upon, which is a huge problem when it comes down to messaging, especially when it comes to um, resources and stuff, because we can't duplicate messaging in the same way that Republicans can. I also think that we're missing a huge part of this, which has to do with misinformation and disinformation that we are constantly fighting against within the Republican Party, and the stronghold that Republicans have and conservatives have within radio and like radio and media. Because as lefts, we don't have that.
No. I mean, if you.
Have the Republicans even asked for anything yet? Like, that's another point that I wanted to make eventually, and you don't have to do it right this second. But as far as I know, like the Republicans haven't even like countered this. We're fighting against the Democrats are fighting against themselves, right?
Well,
Yeah, the
I just think
Republicans
that
don't wanna.
they don't want anything to do with this bill. I imagine they probably wouldn't want to pass it at all. So I don't think it makes sense for Democrats to be negotiating with Republicans right now, because Republicans aren't the ones who they need to support the bill. All the other Democrats are more than happy to just pass it in a partisan manner. So all they need to do is get the two remaining Democrats on board. So it doesn't make sense to argue with the Republicans, and it doesn't make sense for the Republicans to say anything, because they can just sit back and watch the leftist infighting or Democrat infighting. I guess they're not leftists, but
Yeah, Republicans don't support this kind of legislation for the same reason they don't support any legislation that would actually help people when Democrats are in charge. They want us to fail. They want people to suffer because they want to be able to say, look at what these Democrats are doing to you. It's exactly what they did to steal like the South from us, like when Nixon took it back in the old days. Like, just nothing's getting better, and they're the reason it's not getting better. And I know that, and you know that, but guess what? People that live there, they don't fucking understand that because the messaging is warped as bad as it is.
Your sound is breaking up a bit. We heard what you said, but your sound is breaking up. Yeah. So I still don't. I feel like I keep asking this question, and maybe am I missing it?
There's nothing to sell right now. There's nothing to sell. Exactly. We haven't done anything.
Exactly.
Like that's the problem.
I think
is that we have to have to like figure out a way that we can actually negotiate with Manchin to get fucking something passed. And like, yeah, it makes me mad as hell that a coal baron is the reason that we don't get like a carbon tax. It makes me mad that he's the reason that we don't get like SBA loans for unionized shops and worker co-ops. Like it kills me too, and I hate him. But we have to get something through because we have to be able to tell them that we tried fucking something in 2022 or we are fucked. And then in 2024, if we have like Trump win again and he has like both houses of Congress, like I don't think people remember how close we got to some really, really bad stuff under him.
Yeah, but he also spent a shitload more money. Like he spent $9.5 trillion in stimulus to Biden's so far 4.2. Like it's more than double in the 1 year that he was like had during COVID too. And like then the other point I want to make is that like if we put this $1.5 trillion bill through, it actually makes us look worse. Like we're adding $1.5 trillion of debt and getting none of the things that we want. Right. So it's like essentially all going to bloat and bullshit. Like it's like 1.5 trillion is like what it takes to start all these programs. And it's not actually going to finish a damn thing. Like the rest of the money is like the meat, like, you know what I mean? Like we're just getting the potatoes with this bullshit, and it's going to make the Democrats look worse. They're better off saying, no, I'm sorry that you can't eat. You know what I mean? But we couldn't pass a bill because Joe Manchin is being an asshole. So maybe write him a letter or call his office or go stand outside it with a sign or something. You know what I mean? Like that would probably be a better move than passing some lame bill that has been completely gutted of any substance whatsoever. It's honestly going to hurt the Democrats if they put through a $1.5 trillion bill after coming out asking for $6 trillion and then $4 trillion and now $3.5 and now, you know what I mean? And they haven't even negotiated with the Republicans yet.
I completely
there's
disagree.
nothing left in the bill
Generally,
that helps people?
blame the party that's in power for legislation not happening. So because Democrats have control of the presidency, the House, and in some aspects the Senate, although it's really close in the Senate, it will definitely look worse for Democrats if nothing gets passed than it will look for Republicans. So I don't agree with you that, you know, something would be less
I'm less
preferable
interested
to
in the
nothing.
party thing, though. I'm less interested in the party thing and more interested in the results for the working class. You know what I mean?
So here's
Right, but
my,
I mean,
here's my
from your
contention on that, and here's the argument for Democrats in the midterms. Hey, listen, we pushed through the bills that we could get through with the majority, or with the Senate that we had, with the Senate makeup that we had. Okay, we did as much as we possibly could, but in order for us to get the extra mile to get everything we want, we need more Democratic senators that will fight for these bills and these projects. Here's where you can mobilize. Here's where you can come in and help to make this change in your community, in your state, so that we can see a broader package.
So
We were constrained by the makeup of Congress as it sits now,
so
and there's no way around that.
But
It's not
no, go ahead.
it's not the strongest sales pitch that we could have, but it's frankly the best that we're going to be able to get away with as things are right now. Like I completely agree with you on that.
So but okay. But here's the thing, and this kind of maybe dovetails with what Amanda was saying before about messaging, is like could we actually, one, like if people are yelling at me about being pragmatic, right? Looking at reality as it stands. Well, okay, I could do that. Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, would they ever say anything like that? Would they ever even, first of all, backhandedly slap Joe Manchin like that? No, that's not going to happen. There's no way, right? And like, what are these progressive bills that they want to pass, right? Like, they didn't fight for the $15 an hour minimum wage, for instance, right? They just kind of let that die because the bureaucrats said no. They're like, oh, okay, I guess that's it. We could just fire this person and move on, right? We could have just done that, but we didn't. Like, what is the list? What is the list?
That was Kirsten Sinema.
No, hold on. I wasn't Kirsten Sinema. That was Chuck Schumer. Or yeah.
No, she voted down the $15 an hour minminimum wage. That was
She did, very famously.
He's talking about the firing of the Senate parliamentarian.
Parliamentarian is what I was talking about.
Well, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Fire that fucker.
Although I think it's a lot harder. The Senate parliamentarian thing, that would be a substantial veer off from precedent. The
Republicans
they've done it in the 1970s, but there was a law passed in 1984 making it more difficult.
Who cares?
I don't care. Precedent doesn't matter at all to me. I don't give a shit about precedent.
No.
I'm just trying to correct the fact
But I'm saying that not one single fucking voter gives a shit about that. Not one. Right? Like, you put $15 an hour in their pocket and they are grateful. They don't give a shit, this random person that is not elected, they've never heard of, and if they even understand the makeup of the Senate in general, like, no one cares, right? The Democrats can say, we have delivered you $15 an hour minimum wage. It will be a coup, and let it drop to your hands, right? Because they didn't actually care. Again, what Amanda said at the start with that Onion article, they didn't actually care. So living in reality, well, that messaging that Jason's talking about isn't bad messaging. I agree, but like, that's not going to happen. And so within the narrow confines of the Democratic Party, right, as to what they want, as to what they'll actually fight for, like, how can we make ground anywhere, right? Like, why would anyone elect a new Democratic, unless it's an open seat and it happens to go that way, 50-50 chance, and then it comes up in our favor. But I don't see, like, what will actually be said, like what the messaging can actually be in reality, not my fantasy. Okay.
So we have to get something passed, and I understand that, like Revolt said, like, we only have the potatoes left in the bill. They took out the meat. I personally would prefer to live off potatoes than starve. Like, I guess that I've just accepted the fact that to be a leftist in this country is always going to be suffer indignity after indignity from people who have worse ideas than you and yet still win every fucking time. And that's just the reality of it. The best that you're going to be able to do as things stand right now is harm reduction. And harm reduction is getting something passed that we can try to sell something on and try to flip some more Senate seats so that we can actually get some real legislation through in the future.
Indignity after indignity. Sounds like being a woman, honestly, in this country. People with worse ideas than you getting all the credit. Okay, let's go Pan. Pan?
Did you say me?
Yeah, you had your hand up
Post-gamer
for a
moment.
second. Didn't you have your hand up before?
Did I?
Oh,
I don't think
you put your
so.
hand up. You definitely did. All right. Anyway, anyone else want to go?
Oh, I did. Okay, so I completely forgot that I did that. Yeah, so I do think that there are other issues that Democrats can be branding themselves on that are very popular. Maybe they might not have any economic issues, but a lot of the culture war stuff that they have is in their favor, like criminal justice reform and stuff like that. I think that it's not just, you can focus on things other than economic issues. And while obviously criminal justice reform isn't going to work in deeply red states, it is going to win people, people like me over who might be, interested in seeing some of their reforms passed. And I think that it's, there are general policies that Democrats can brand for that aren't economic that, at least in some states might be effective.
I
mean-
also want to point out that if Biden fulfilled his student loan debt promise, there would be $15 million really happy people ready to get to the polls to vote. So that's something he can do.
Yeah, that's another like insane thing. Like this is like another thing that if they had like they listened to their actual economics advisors, right, and they didn't include people like Larry Summer in that list, like we could have had this done by now, and like it would have cost the country absolutely nothing. Like there's a couple of ways that you can go about paying this back, but there's a way that you can structure it that Stephanie Kelton outlined in 2017 and in a paper that she wrote for the Levi Institute, that like it is possible to structure it so that it costs absolutely nothing to pay off that debt. Like, because you're essentially what the government's doing is ripping up like IOUs that it wrote to itself. Like the cash has already been spent by the colleges, and like forgiving that debt like would cost nothing. So it's like this is how stupid they are. It's a free $1.5 trillion stimulus to the people that are most likely to go out and buy cars, homes, dishwashers, like all the expensive stuff that like you want, that stirs our economy, drives our economy forward, and we're not giving it to them. For what reason? And like it's absolutely insane to me, because this could have been done on an EO. Like it could have been done with an executive order. It didn't even have to go through Congress.
I'm hoping personally that he is just holding off on this until like 2 or 3 months before the midterms. So then yeah, that's my hope, but I don't really believe that that's what's going on.
Or, well, it could be too a strategic thing where he's saying, okay, if I can't get this infrastructure and reconciliation package passed the way I want to, let's use that. There will be our cudgel. We'll go ahead and do the student loan forgiveness. I think if he did it beforehand, though, here's the one thing I'll give him on this. With the college debt forgiveness, if he would have done that before he started pushing for the reconciliation package and infrastructure package, you definitely would not have Joe Manchin on board for any of it at all. Like he would not be for any of it. It would be $0, because he claims to be a fiscal conservative, which Kirsten Sinema just said on 92.3 radio station here in Arizona yesterday, that she's a fiscal conservative and a social liberal. I'm like, well, aren't you a libertarian then? What the fuck are you doing in our party? But anyways, I think that if you did that, if he's waiting, so that they can't use that as a reason not to be in favor of these bills, that could be beneficial. And he comes out afterwards and does the thing, forgive student loan debt. Great. Then if you have those pared down bills, that looks really, really good next to it. But I don't know that he's playing 4D chess right now. I really don't. I think he doesn't have much control over his party or what's happening. I think that, like I said, I think he could use his bully pulpit quite a bit more to get what he wants. But he's still at a disadvantage because he's got two senators claiming to be fiscal conservatives that won't budge. So yeah, hold off on the student aid or student loan debt forgiveness until after these pass. And with that, because the argument that he could make then, right, is, okay, listen, they wouldn't go as far as I wanted to on these infrastructure and reconciliation packages. In order to compensate for that, we're just forgiving all student loan debt, right? That would be a hell of a way to do it. I mean, that would be a hell of a way to do it, because then you're getting a little bit of what, like Revolt Ride said, you're getting the potatoes, but the meat's coming in that student loan forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, so you're probably honestly not going to be able to get student loan forgiveness from these people. It's just not going to happen with the way that things are in this country right now. I mean, they're talking about Pell Grant increases in the 2022 budget, so that's something that we could sell to like ex-students that are trying to pay these off. You can reform income-driven repayment plans, which actually is like less of a redistribution of wealth to the wealthy than forgiving student loans is. And income-driven repayment plans in other countries actually work very, very well when they're used, because it makes it to where if you make money after you get out of college, you do have to pay it back, right? But if you're just fucked and not making enough money, well, you know what? You pay like based off of your income for a certain period of time, and then like if it still doesn't like go away, eventually that loan just gets wiped. So this way you're not making it to where like we already have a disproportionate amount of wealth between people who went to college in this country and didn't, right? So if you forgive student loans, that is a redistribution of wealth in the direction that I do not like, which is upward.
Yeah, but that's easily corrected by increasing the tax on the people that you didn't want to get the benefit, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be lovely, but I mean, some of these people are just making like 80,000 a year. I don't really want their taxes to go up necessarily. Like,
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, that's what's so great about the taxation plan is like you can literally target exactly who you want. Like you know what I mean? If you say people over 300,000 should get no benefit from that, then there could be a one-time tax for anybody who got the tax benefit of $10,000 that gets tacked onto anybody who makes more than 300 grand a year. You can easily do that.
yeah, it just seems to me that there's not broad support for student loan forgiveness in this country. It's only really supported by people like us on the far left. People in the center would be perfectly fine with revising income-driven repayment plans. And again, it has the same effect for the poor people that need it, who are the ones that I care about.
Yeah, but what it doesn't do though, like the problem with that is like what we want to do is like these are people that have already been approved for credit, right? And right now their credit is full. And so we're going to take their credit and we're going to like zero it out. And now they've got enough room left on their credit to make a down payment on a house or like buy a new car or like do the things that make
that would
feed
be
into the economy.
Hold
Yes,
tight.
that would
I
be.
want to go back
Hold
to
on. That would go
something
5 seconds. That would be one of the things that we need to revise about IDR programs. We need to make it to where student loans don't affect your actual credit. They're kept track of separately. We need to make it to where they don't accrue interest when they're in IDR programs.
I don't disagree with you overall, but for the time being, if they're not going to give us the stimulus, we need to get it from somewhere. And like cutting everybody's credit down, like the available credit line down, is going to hurt the economy in a big way.
But that would be easier to sell as a revision to existing IDR programs than it would as a student loan forgiveness program in this country, I think.
Maybe that's a way to go at it. But the important part is that any program has to allow for leaving the amount of credit. Like if you earn 60,000 in debt, whatever we do to that debt, like you need to keep your 60,000 credit limit in order for what I'm saying to be true. Otherwise, all you're doing is you're hurting the economy. You know what I mean? Like you're taking money out of the economy and you're putting it into like something that we don't need to actually pay for, and it's not productive in any way. Like literally, when you take your loan payments and you send them into the government, that's not going into some big bank account, right? That goes to pay for everything. They take it and they burn it. If you send cash, if you don't send cash, if you send ones and zeros, they delete them. Like it's like completely stupid. Like
So hear me out. If you put it,
Doctor, I want to call you out on something though, because you said something. You said that most of the country doesn't agree with student loan forgiveness.
Okay, whatever.
65% of likely voters in a poll that came out that was just released by Forbes back in September support the public service loan forgiveness program, which forgives qualifying federal student loans for borrowers employed by nonprofit and governmental organizations.
This is irrelevant.
67% of respondents, including 58% of Republicans, support some form of widespread student
Do we
loan
go by
forgiveness.
the popular vote in this country?
I'm sorry?
Do we go by the popular vote in this country? Do we have?
I think polling sentiments matter. Absolutely,
they do at a state level based on how much power that state has in our democracy.
No, but you said the majority of the country doesn't agree with student loan forgiveness. That's bullshit.
It's not completely.
I didn't say the majority of the country. I said the majority of like politicians and people in government. Like I said, the far left is really the only people that are for student loan forgiveness at this point. Like that's just facts as far as I can tell. The center Democrats that I talked to do not want it forgiven. The Republicans definitely don't want it forgiven. Why is it that we cannot just simply do something that we can actually sell the center Democrats on, which would be IDR reform? So like if you take the income-driven repayment plans and you make it to where their payments cannot be more than 5% of their income unless they make under $40,000 a year in which they have a $0 payment, it cannot affect their credit limit. and after a certain period of time, it's forgiven, and the loan does not accrue interest, what is the difference between that and
Because
student
those
loan
of us on
forgiveness for the people
IDR
who
who are
actually
still
need it?
bridled with debt and still have that debt show up on our credit reports?
I'm telling you, that would
Are
be one of the things
screwed.
that we reform. Will you
Yeah,
listen?
IDR is
Let me
very
list
different.
the 4 things again. What we need to reform about IDR, and this is something that we can sell to center Democrats, is does not accrue interest while in IDR, does not affect your credit limit, does not charge more than 5% of the income unless you make over 40,000, in which you place you under 40,000, in which case you pay none, and it's forgiven after a shorter period of time. That helps out the people who are struggling due to student loans. It is easier to sell to center Democrats, and there is no redistribution of wealth to the wealthy, and they're already doing fine. It's literally that easy. Like, and then if we want to do student loan forgiveness later and just make colleges publicly funded, we can do that. But this is what's easy to sell right now, and it has the exact same effect for the people who need it and that we want to sway to vote for us.
Amanda?
It doesn't,
I just
doesn't
want
have
to
the
point out
effect
that
on the
that like
economy.
Amanda?
yeah, that just shows like again, there's so many things that make it obvious that our Congress is not representative of this country and this country's opinions, and why it's so important that we get out and vote. But there's also like the thing is like, okay, so I work campaigns, right? I don't think people realize how freaking hard it is to get people to get out and actually vote their ideals. And we don't invest in what it takes to do that. Like what we need to do is continually, like I said at the beginning, is continually invest in states and invest in this communication line so that people are educated and motivated and driven. But we also need to have the administration do things that get people to be motivated to go and talk to people and get things like this passed. Yeah, I don't know. The other issue I have is that states all across the nation are constantly passing legislation that makes it so much harder for us to vote, especially Democrats and progressives. And yeah, it's really hard. Organizing is really exhausting, and I don't think a lot of people realize that like the base that we have is it's really hard to go out and volunteer your time as a Democrat. I mean, we are working class, poor, tired, exhausted. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that like national polling on support for policies means absolutely nothing as far as your ability to get it passed in this country. And like I said in my opening statement, that's because our congressional system was made by slave owners who wanted to redistribute more power to slave states. Like California has 70 times less the electoral college power that Wisconsin does. And also, how many of these people, the 65% that support student loan forgiveness, actually vote? Like a lot of people on the left do not vote. Republicans, they vote. You want to know why? Because they're concerned about their taxes being lower. They have a like personal investment in it. And
Right.
Another thing is that these public opinion polls aren't always as accurate as you might think, because they don't include all the knowledge that a voter will get once the policy discussion actually gets to the mainstream. So,
Yeah.
for example, one thing I was looking up kind of earlier was about how Biden is cutting the federal paid leave program, right? And polls show that an overwhelming majority of Americans support federal paid leave. It was like 74% or something like that. And that was until you told them that it would mean that they would get smaller raises in the future, as corporations wouldn't give as large raises in the future to offset the risk and cost of paid family leave. And then 60% opposed it. So
Is that actually
just
the case?
talking,
Oh?
yeah, I can send the poll.
No,
Although it's a
not
source
the
you
Hold
guys
on,
poll.
don't
wait,
like.
No,
But
was your point that polls are inaccurate and they suck? So I'm gonna send you a poll to show that.
no.
No.
My point was that you can
Okay,
easily
sorry.
easily manipulate public opinion by phrasing your poll in the right way, and also by
Definitely.
keeping information out that. So if just because there's public opinion poll shows that, oh, these people asked when given this information would support the policy, doesn't mean that they'll still support the policy when they get more information about it.
No. I mean,
That's my
the thing
point.
that I was asking is, like, is it actually the case that you will get smaller raises because this offsets something from a corporation? Like, that's what I want to know about. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
and
if the
in terms
corporations
of-
have to pay for it, yeah, because it increases employee expense, right?
Well, I know. Well, like that's what I want to know. Like, do you have a source for that part? That part's the most interesting thing. Yeah, yes, you can.
I didn't think that part would be controversial, but I can look for a source.
If you simply say that, like, yeah, there's this great policy, but also there's a negative aspect of this policy, well, then yes, you'll get less support for that policy, right? But I want to know if overall that's necessarily the case. And I would actually be in favor of the government pitching in to help pay for federal leave. I think that would actually be a good thing. Parental leave. Yeah.
All right. I mean, I'll look for that for you. I didn't know this was controversial. I thought this was pretty well established in mainstream economics that if employee cost goes up, the amount that employers can compensate goes down because they have to provide the benefits instead of the cash payments. But I will look for an official source on that for you.
Sure.
I also wanted to point
Well,
out
that would
another
back into the government.
But that's assuming a perfect market of labor, and we don't have that. We've got a labor shortage. They keep claiming over and over and over again. They're screaming it from the top of their lungs, like all over the place. Like there's almost no way that wages are going to go down as a result of this.
No. I didn't wait. Obviously, wages aren't going to go down because of the employment right now, but it is going to affect future raises, right? So as inflation comes up, the raises are going to be lower, so that you don't actually have to lower the wages in real. Or you don't have to in nominal terms to make it real. Lower. Yeah, relatively.
But I mean that's something that again, like if you have any kind of payment plan that's chained to CPI, will take care of that issue simply, right?
Is it? I mean, I don't think it is chained to CPI though, right? Like wages that you get from a company.
I mean, most contracts are usually they'll have an inflation adjustment every single year.
Okay, I also wanted to point out in regards to the education reform thing. One thing that is in the 2022 budget proposal is 2 free years of community college, which for people like me who didn't go to school or finish at least, that would be life changing, right? Like I could go back to school, and I promise you that there are more people in these southern states that you're trying to convince who didn't go to school than are struggling with giant student loan debt. And if you can reform IDR and also get people into college for free, they'll be much more grateful than just simply student loan forgiveness right now.
Well, we're fucked on that though.
We're trying to, because you're never going to get it passed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they already whittled that part out.
Yeah, they kicked that out of the
2
bill
years
already.
of free college, and
Also,
also the budget proposal. Not this bill. It's in the 2022 budget proposal.
While it's true that they do account for inflation, there are additional wage rises that happen in the future and raises and stuff. It's not generally raises actually outpace inflation by a little bit. So by reducing that, they will eventually be able to recoup the cost of this paid maternity leave. Now, to be fair, Prime did say that, okay, well, he's okay with the government supporting it, which would have, different policy implications and would have a different negative downside. But the point is that there are downsides to these policies that aren't that can't be so easily encapsulated in like a 50-word poll. So just because someone agrees when given 50 words of information about a policy, that doesn't mean once they start hearing more about the policy, they're still going to support it.
Hold on, can somebody send me where they took that out of the proposal? Because I'm seeing right here that it's still in the budget proposal, so I don't think that that's accurate at all. They're still offering 2 free years of community college.
Oh, good.
They're asking for 14. They're asking for 14.3 billion to pay for it.
One of the things Prime was sending, or I think that there's an ABC News article that says that. I'll try to get the ABC article because that's one thing I read before doing the thing that maybe it hasn't been cut yet, but it's very likely to get cut according to policy analysts.
Well, if they cut that, then there's no way that you're getting
even from Business Insider from his recent town hall. I don't know if you guys watched the town hall on CNN. He actually said it. He actually said that free community college will not happen in this reconciliation bill. All you had to do was watch the CNN town hall to understand that.
Then why are you saying that there's any chance at all that we would be able to just get student loan forgiveness and then free college altogether? Like if we can't even get 2 years of free community college, how the hell are we going to be able to get student loan?
Well, because I think their argument is that the president can do this unanimously without the Senate, right? So in order to get this a free community college, it has to pass through Congress and stuff. But the federal government, according to what they're saying, can just excuse all of the current student debt.
But to clarify,
I don't know if that's true, but I think that's their argument.
But to clarify, that would only if the president does it, that only gets rid of existing student loans, right? People still have to take out loans to go to college, which means that we're eventually right back in the same situation again, unless the president just forgives it every 2 years. And I'm sorry, we switch presidents too often for that to be the case. So
That's
maybe
you're not wrong, but the point is that we're trying to find a back end way, an end around way to not have to deal with Congress that can't do anything and create a condition for growing jobs in this country and growing opportunities, right? And so having more people have more money, more disposable income is going to create that condition. It's like not the best way to handle it. We like to do it by injecting money into the system, but like we're putting $1.5 trillion into the hands of the most ready consumers. So like it's just going to take longer than getting a direct check from the government. Bottom line is that like, yeah, it sucks. I agree. But like, we can't do anything else. Like, I mean, it'd be nice if we could do this.
Yeah, just a massive redistribution of wealth from people who like haven't gone to college to people who have, who already like.
Well, no, it's not. It's not that at all. It's a massive gift to people that they then raise taxes to take back, and they can take back more if they choose to. I mean, it would literally be like no benefit at all to most people. Like if they chose,
Okay, but you'd
So
have
raise
to attach
taxes
those
on-
policies, right? Like, are you proposing that there's a policy that raises taxes and forgives student loans? Because if you do them as separate, one of them is going to pass. Student loan forgiveness is going to pass, but raising taxes is not going to pass.
Yeah.
So the results of that would just be no hike in taxes, but student loan gets forgiven, and the transfer of wealth that Spectre talked about would just happen.
Most people didn't take out federal loans if they were rich. Like, I mean, like if you look at the demographics of the people who owe this debt,
No, but they might be rich now, right? Like on average, as we were saying, is
they're still saddled with student loan debt. So are they really rich, or are they actually not making as much? If you look at
a doctor with $250,000 in student loan debt is still richer than average workers. Yes, doesn't matter that they have debt. If they have a very high income and are able to pay off that debt, then they are still doing substantially better off.
There's this thing called debt to income ratio. Have you heard of
that?
It's
not even that. It's not even that. It's that like these are okay. So the doctor gets to pay off their debt sooner, which means they get to open a new practice, which means they're going to have to hire more staff, which means they're going to make more jobs sooner. Like that's it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, sure. But we're talking about the very fringe. Like, who cares? Like, let them have it. Like, they're going to get everything else given to them for the rest of their lives anyway. You might as well let them have this because it's going to take care of the bulk of the people that actually need it and the bulk of the people that are going to receive the benefit from it too. Like, we want to get everybody, make it universal. And you know what I mean? And again, then there's going to be a lot less tolerance in this country for the tax rates being as low as they are. And so maybe that was what spurs us to a Democratic victory that gets us the tax bill. But who cares? Who cares? It's not going to hurt the economy. It's going to be a huge benefit to the economy that we're not getting any other way.
I will point out that any of the social services that we had where we didn't do means testing did well and stayed for longer, which is why we still have Social Security and Medicare, because means testing isn't involved for that. The minute you enter means testing, people feel like they're being left out, whether that's the rich, the moderately wealthy, or, people that are just in the middle class that are just above the level by which we would say forgive student loan debt. Why on earth would they be in favor of that?
What about the people?
Remove means testing, it gives everybody the opportunity to participate. And if everybody has the opportunity to participate, nobody can say that they're not getting what somebody else is getting.
I agree with you that means testing is crap, but what about the people who feel left out by the fact that we just forgave everybody's student loan and they still don't get to go to college? Because those are the people that live in the states in the South that you're saying that you want to flip.
Yeah, but they still, those people right now, right? Like there's people in their neighbors and there's people in their communities right now that are not opening businesses that could hire them. They're not doing things that could create like this situation that they could have more money and be making more money because they're giving their money to the government so it can burn it every month. Like it's completely inefficient. It's not as if the poor people are going to pay for the rich people. Nobody's going to pay for it. Nobody pays for it. It's free. Like it's literally just a paperwork issue. And like, and the reason it's not being done is because like the people that are in charge of this country don't have any economic literacy whatsoever. And like, and that's that.
But you said that we have to like tax people to make it to where it's like not a redistribution of wealth. So my question would be, at what income bracket do we tax it at?
Whatever you want, whatever one you want. I don't think you should tax any of it. I think you should let it all get spent because it's not like you're giving them cash, you're giving them credit.
That's
fair. We don't create cash into the economy, which is going to be the same as a stimulus from the government. So like, why not keep it this way?
We already don't spend enough money relative to our GDP to give have enough debt. So I'll back off that point. That's fine. We can just spend the fucking money. But I don't know. Like, unless you make college free, I think that it's just a Band-Aid on a problem, and it's like a short-term game, like optically. And I don't see a president who's like barely for free 2 years of college for giving student loans at that level. I just don't. And he also like has a history of being in bed with credit card companies. So I
Oh, of
don't know.
course. Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean, they're bastards, and we know that too. And there's still a whole problem. Like in 2008, the size of the bubble, the size of the housing bubble, has now been eclipsed by the size of the private bond market, right? So it's like instead of housing, now it's a bunch of companies that aren't worth shit, and they've been being kept alive by having corporate debt floated to them, and like we're still facing that. And like you combine that with like the increasing interest rate that's going to come about because we don't have enough treasury bills, because we didn't print enough money, because we didn't spend it all, like because we're economically illiterate on every fucking level of our government, and like we're gonna have an even worse crash than we had in 2008 next year anyway. So
Well,
it's like,
Wait,
what are we arguing?
yes.
Well, what was the name of those things where the banks took a bunch of mortgages and like grouped them together?
CDOs.
Okay, so they're doing those with student loans right now. Like people do, like banks do invest in student loans. Like so, you are taking like money away from them as well, which
And they're
is
federally
going to be
backed.
unpopular.
The only
Yeah.
ones that would apply to this scheme are federally backed loans, right? Like because the federal government has already, like when you get a loan from the government or anybody, like any bank, they create the money out of thin air, right? Like they just credit your checking account, the amount, right? And then it gets sorted on the back end through back to the Fed and the Treasury. But like essentially it comes out of thin air. So like the government already printed the money and gave it to the colleges, and that money's spent into the economy. It's already gone. And like all we have left is like the IOUs. And so like the IOUs are written from the government to the government, and the government's holding them. So just rip them up. Like that's the point about the student loans.
And
The
the
rest
student,
of the debt is fucked. Like, yeah, you're right.
yeah, like private debt is not going to be forgivable. But that's not the majority of student loan debt anyway. So I guess that's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's owed to the government. The student loan servicers aren't really people that I want to keep in business. Like, this is all great, but again, it's still just a short-term solution. This doesn't actually help anybody get to college.
You're right. You're right. Well, when we used to fund college here, like I mean, like the federal government used to fund every state university, right? And then in the 1970s, during the stagflation crisis, they decided to like offload the debt or like offload that liability onto the students. And in order to make sure that they would have enough students, they federally backed the loans.
And I just feel like something like that, or just making college free, or for the first like couple of years, would be more popular in places that are poor in the South that we have already discussed, or what we're trying to hopefully flip eventually.
So okay,
then
We'll
Yeah,
wiping
yeah,
off
so
somewhere.
I'm a little curious about this then, Spectre, because you've gone to where I want to go. Like, how do we actually get this message out, right? So we're talking about, and I'm a leftist, so to me this all sounds really great, and like expanding the number of people who can go to college, hopefully making it fucking universal, right? And a whole other list of progressive agendas or priorities that I think would be helpful. How do we actually just, make that a reality, right? How do we message this to individuals? How do we start convincing people? Like,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry,
And
can I take that? Yeah,
yeah.
so I think most people, including the DNC, still focuses on a top-down strategy within voting, where the top of the ticket inspires people to continue that voting pattern. Whereas I think so many of these issues can be fixed by focusing on local elections with a top-up strategy and investing in politicians that will hold a flame to the establishment to get people to get out and vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, were you talking about like the free college thing specifically? Like, how do we market that, Prime, or?
Yeah, I mean the whole progressive
So,
agenda. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
the whole progressive agenda. I mean,
Well, you can focus on one piece if you want. Like,
yeah,
whatever.
I mean, if we're talking about the 2 years of free college, it's very simple, right? Like right now, even in Tennessee, technically you get 2 free years of community college, but like only if you just got out of high school, right? So the people who didn't go to school right away, that are just like stuck at a dead end job working at McDonald's at 27, if you told them, hey, I don't care if you're 42, if you want to go like learn a trade and actually make some real money, or even possibly like get good grades and then maybe be able to get a scholarship to go to university, that's now an opportunity that you have. That gives them hope, like, which is something that people in like Appalachia and the rest of the poor parts of this country desperately fucking need right now, because they are losing jobs, because there is a brain drain. The people who become successful don't stay there, they leave. They don't like stick around and create jobs like we're saying that they're going to do when student loans are forgiven, because they move to a place that's better. Like, we have to do something that actually helps the people that we are leaving behind and don't want to vote for Democrats as a result. And I think that would probably be much better than student loan forgiveness at this point, and easier to sell.
I keep hearing this panel say we have to do something. Can I ask you guys what are you guys doing?
Nothing.
Like, seriously though, like, I keep hearing this and it drives me insane. Like, I'm out here like constantly fighting for these at a local level, at federal level, out knocking doors, calling people. Like, you guys constantly ask, what can we do? Well, what are you doing?
Amanda, I am on a PrimeCayes panel right now, spreading awareness to the good leftist message. I'm doing my part as an honest rightoid, spreading the leftist message, helping you guys strategize. I'm doing my part. I don't think you want me doing more political activity than this, because it probably would be in the opposite direction.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
yeah.
$700 to every progressive candidate that runs in my district, and I knock doors and do all that bullshit when it's time to.
And I worked with like DSA LA when I was there. I signed up for DSA Austin when I got here. Mental health stuff has kept me from organizing, but I'll get into it eventually. I don't know. Like, I worked on the Bernie campaign. I've kind of been like blackpilled on electoral politics and putting any effort into it since then, to be very frank. It's something that I'd get back into, like, hopefully for the right candidate. And you're right. Like, if I'm arguing for harm reduction, I should just be like supporting candidates that I don't necessarily think are perfect. But it's very difficult to get the motivation for some people to do so. And I don't think that shaming them is like going to help, honestly.
Well, and I
Well,
kind of agree. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll tell you what I do. I'm at my kids' school board's meeting. I work with the Democrats of LD 17. I am a member of the DSA and regularly attend DSA meetings. I go out and I do participate in polling drives and in I'm trying to think of the word, getting petitions out there to get things on our ballots. I've been involved. My band has even been involved in political protests and advocating that way. All around, like I'm intrinsically involved in what happens in the politics in my community, and I think that everybody should be. I think it's I think if you're not doing something on the local level, you can't expect anything to happen on the federal level because everything
Bingo.
happens from the ground up. The reason that Arizona has moved to the left is because people are working on the local level to make those changes. That's the truth. And if you're not doing that, then you might as well like fucking, sit on your hands and pretend like, in your mind you're going to change things through fucking psychic abilities or some shit. It's not going to fucking happen. Like if all you do is go out for the general elections or the federal elections, nothing's going to change for you. Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I also
Yeah, like
feel like
15% of people like vote in their local elections, which is so small, like only 15%. Inspector, you brought up a really great point, which again is something that I had said earlier in regards to Republicans are constantly making it harder for working class people to vote, whether that's through not passing legislation where we have Medicare for all so we can take care of our mental health, or passing bills where they're getting rid of voting stations, or here in Iowa we went down, I think it was 90 days of early voting by mail to 45 days. So there's like so many things that make this really hard. So I guess my point is get out to your local elections. Like, if you can only invest in one organizing strategy, don't focus on federal, please.
Before
I agree.
we're at level 2 hype train. 25% done, 75% left. 2 minutes on the clock. Thank you to Crystal Clear Art, Jason Society here, and Boji for the assistance. If we can get to level 3 hype trains, how we pay for this? Subs to the channel, gift bits or gift subs would be help us out a ton. Less than 2 minutes on the clock. Can we get to level 3 hype train? But go ahead, Spectre.
Yeah, so that's all great, right? Like, people should be more involved at the local level. I agree, right? My one thing that I think that we also have to look at and figure out some way to fix, right, is the brain drain that occurs in these poor red states, right? Because people like become successful and they leave, or they don't become successful. Like, when I left Tennessee, I had nothing, but I still went somewhere else because I needed better opportunities, right? So those people aren't sticking around where they grew up to actually help flip these states blue. They're just leaving and going to already blue states, already blue metropolitan areas.
Right, but that all comes back to well, the reason why is because they don't have the infrastructure to have industry in those areas, right? And like the way you fix that is by building infrastructure, and the way you do that with an infrastructure bill. And like,
But it's a catch-22 because if they're not staying around to vote at the local level, who's going to get these things passed?
you got to build the roads to go to the places so that they can stay there in the first place.
Less than a minute left on that hype train. 52% done. 48% left. Can we get to a level 3 hype train? Thank you, taking notes for those subs. But we're almost there to a level 3 hype train. Can we make it? I need your help to make that happen. But thank you for those who helped us out so far. Go ahead.
Does the infrastructure bill provide any money to the states to help them like build these roads that you're talking about by any chance? And maybe we could do that to make it easier for people not to want to move out of red states.
That is one of the things that like it includes. Absolutely, yeah.
That's still in there, correct? So I mean, we can possibly get Joe Manchin to compromise on that. So it's not all potatoes.
Wait, I'm pretty sure the really infrastructure plan is already passed. It's in waiting for the House. The House just wants to pass it at the same time as the Build Back Better plan. So as soon as we pass the Build Back Better plan, the House is going to pass the actual infrastructure bill separately. So that's going to happen kind of regardless. Joe Manchin playing ball has nothing to do with that, unless he has an incentive to get the Build Back Better plan passed so that this infrastructure, so that the people in the House who are holding it up will pass it. But that's what's happening.
So that means that there is still stuff in this bill that does help us convince people to not convince people to vote blue, but it convinces people who want to vote blue to stay in places that we need to flip blue. So it does actually help us affect change politically still if we get this passed. Like we don't want to just throw our hands in the air and let Joe Manchin become a Republican over it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the Democrats in the House are the ones holding it right now. So if this Build Back Better plan doesn't work and this all falls through, it can still pass. Democrats are just holding on to it right now for leverage to try to get Joe Manchin and people to agree to Build Back Better plan. The infrastructure is pretty much guaranteed.
Well, I mean, that infrastructure that you're talking about, though, is money that is being spent on upgrading existing. It's like money for states to use in their budgets for maintenance and repairs that are behind on existing infrastructure. It's not for building out new infrastructure, right?
I think there's some parts to it. I don't know the entire details of the plan, but I do know that the $1.5 trillion infrastructure plan is waiting in the House for the Senate to pass the Build Back Better plan.
Exactly. So the Senate's passed the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, which this is a bill that is going to supplement state budgets for maintaining existing stuff and not build anything new or not build much new.
I want to make a point that I don't know if it's going to land or mean anything, but here in Iowa, we had a whole bunch of anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation almost passed this year, and a whole bunch of corporations and businesses ended up registering against the bills because they have noticed a huge change on Democrats moving out of the state, and they are losing money because of it. And so in order to have booming business and stuff, we have to continually keep people within our state. And so it's just really interesting that so much power was shown with these bills in regards to corporations and businesses. I also want to make a point that you yourselves can go to your state legislator website, register as a lobbyist, and lobby against bills so you can show that you support or don't support something. So go flood your state's legislator website.
Based.
To you. So it sounded like to me, and thank you, Politically Provoked, for the raid, much appreciated. It sounded like to me that what you had said before, Amanda, about motivating people to want to discuss these priorities. It sounded to me like that wins beget wins, right? If you deliver something, then people want to get more of those wins, right? It motivates them to fight for more parts of your agenda, right? Even if you don't deliver them the moon, right? If you give them a taste of what victory looks like, then they have something to fight for. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think especially Democrats, they don't. When they have a win, they don't really let people know. like here's something we did, and they don't really let people know. Or when they're just too busy watering down their own agenda, so that whatever they do deliver isn't something revolutionary, something that people will be excited about. But I like this idea of trying to motivate the base through accomplishments rather than through rhetoric. Right? That's the other way of doing it. It's just to say that we will deliver this. Well, we promise we'll do something, right? Put us in, or because the other side is worse, which I think is often what we get, right? Like Republicans are worse, and so we'll put a gun to your head. Like it's a hostage situation, right? Like put us in, or who knows what the other side will do to you. And
yeah, No, I agree with everything that you're saying, right? Like it would be much better if we just like marketed, hey, we accomplished this for you, than saying the Republicans are going to instate like a neo-fascist, like whatever they say to like make people scared of Republicans, which is the way that the Democratic Party has marketed itself for the last 8 years, no longer, ever since Hillary basically told CNN, not even CNN, um, she told most of the media companies, and this is a leaked email, like, hey, start taking Trump seriously because I think I can beat him because I can make people scared of him. Like that's been the marketing strategy of the Democratic Party ever since. But the thing is that in order for us to be able to be like, hey, we know we didn't give you the moon, we tried, but we got you this, we have to be willing to accept harm reduction and compromise. We can't stamp our feet and be like, all right, well, we're not getting everything that we wanted. And this is something that frustrates me about leftists and the way they engage in electoral politics of this country. It's this all or nothing philosophy. And nobody gets that. Not even conservatives get that when they're in power. Like you have to be willing to lose on something. That way you can sell them what you did accomplish and then push for more later. Like revolution is not happening electorally or violently. Like this is gradual change. And I know that's not what we need. We need quick change, but that's what we're going to get. So we might as well just accept and settle for it.
But I mean, like the Democrats could at least read the art of the deal and learn that, like, if you start low, you'll never get more. Like your first offer is the highest it's ever going to go. So if the first offer that you give the Republicans is fucking trash, you know what I mean? Like there's just no, like we're still at the stage where they haven't even let the Republicans review the bill and taken their comments and started that negotiation yet. So like,
but the bill originally had like preferential SBA loans for worker co-ops and unions. How much further left can you get? Like,
I mean, like there should have been more of them. Like, I mean, like, yeah, like
higher SBA loans, like.
Yeah, there could have been, there's so many things that there could be. Like, I don't even want to go into it. We're not there anymore. But we've already gone from 4 trillion, or it was originally a $6 trillion bill when Bernie was originally touting it around, right? $6 trillion. We're down to 1.8. And like, and they're still going, and we haven't even given it to the Republicans yet. Like, it's going to end up being nothing. And keep in mind, this is over 10 years. This is only
we're not giving a year. We're not doing this with Republicans though. Like that's understood, right? Like we're not doing this we don't need to give them shit.
I mean,
they're not even a part of the conversation.
We're
fighting with ourselves.
It does though, doesn't it? Don't we need 60 votes?
No, not for reconciliation. That's a simple majority. And Harris would have the deciding vote, and that's basically what it is. We are literally fighting with ourselves on this.
Fucking crazy. I can't stand the politics of this country anymore. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, no, that's the other option. Just move forehead.
The people in this country, like, I mean, like, honestly, like, are dumb if they sit there and take this. Like we're literally headed towards another financial crisis. We can all see it coming. Like, everybody can see it coming. That knows what to look for. And like, if we do something about it now, it won't happen. And it'll be very simple. And like, and what needs to be done is they need to spend money. They're going to wait, and they're going to spend all the money after the crisis happens. And they're going to give all the money to the banks, just like Obama did. And like, they're going to be like probably the new biggest fucking transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in history. And like, and the people, the 10 million people, 12 million people are still going to lose their homes. So it's just like, oh God, why do we keep doing this? And then calling it the best system in the world. That's the most frustrating thing.
I have no idea how to obviously fix all of these issues. But I do think it's important for people that are inspired by their, I guess, suffering or adversity to consider running for office and, going out there and putting themselves on the line in order to change this. I agree with Spectre. I am a huge harm reductionist, but I guess at what cost? I feel like our planet's about ready to just go completely under. Everyone seems to be suffering that is working class. And yeah, I don't know what the trade-off is anymore. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, I don't. There's nobody that can offer you a solution for any of that. The best you're going to get is make it like not awful, especially with climate change, right? Like they told us 20 years ago that this is irreversible already, and we're still fucking pumping carbon into the atmosphere. So like at this point, like the climate change conversation, very frankly, needs to be less about how do we stop this and more about how do we deal with this when it starts, because it's happening and it's going to keep getting worse. And yeah, the working class in this country is a beaten dog that doesn't have the energy left to actually fight for itself pretty much, and people aren't getting organized. Well, you know what? They're actually getting very frustrated right now and striking, and that's
I'm
something
going to
that we could,
disagree
like,
with that
play on.
completely.
What one?
Workers are more organized than they've been
Yeah,
in a lot of fucking years.
Yeah, I was
people
about to
seem
walk.
like
I was
super
about
doer
to.
pilled
I was
about
about to.
everything. Like
I was about
everything's going
to.
to fucking shit.
Dude,
Let's not
calm
do
Shout
down.
anything.
out
Fuck it all.
I
You
was
know,
Shout out to
burn it
all the
literally.
down.
Iowa Strikers.
I was
Shout out to
literally
all the Iowa
walk.
Strikers with
I
John
was
Deere and Smithfield. Love you.
I was literally walking back the point as I said it, and you interrupted me to yell about how I'm just fucking blackpilled on everything. I mean, dude, I'm pragmatic. I'm sorry that you're not going to be able to get your socialist utopia in your lifetime. But what you can do is make it to where like less people die. Like that's it. That's what this is at the end of the day. That's what politics comes down to. Improving people's material conditions and trying to preserve human life. Like that's what we can do. That's what we can focus on. And yes, it is great that we have an unprecedented amount of labor action in this country. But again, 50% of unionized workers voted for Trump. These people don't necessarily agree with your politics just because they want higher wages and better benefits, buddy. Like, go on a picket line and talk to people about socialism. Let me know how it goes.
Well, how do you
Depends on the
expect
picket
anything?
line,
How do you expect
definitely.
anything to change if you always, concede to this lesser of two evils thing, like this harm reduction thing? Like, yeah, it might be more painful in the long run, but if you want to make things better and truly better, and not just put a temporary fix, like stop putting a band-aid on a bullet hole, how do you start that without making some short-term sacrifices and trying to build a movement from the ground up, even if it means you lose a couple elections, if it helps in the future make it things permanently better, so you're not consistently bleeding?
Here comes a third party fight.
Oh my God.
It's
Oh
not a
God,
third party
third
fight.
parties,
No,
no.
we don't. We can't have
Third
a
parties,
third
no,
party until we have a
Yeah.
second party.
Third
Yeah.
parties are really complicated, and there's literally like no path forward. I don't know what Andrew Yang is talking about. Great, luckily that he's from New York State, where you can actually register as multiple parties. So there is a path forward in New York, but within all the other states, there is no path forward for a third party. I mean, each state doesn't even have the same third parties, for goodness sakes.
I mean, I don't know. I think there's a way for third parties. We've had third parties in the past. If they can grow, change public opinion, who knows?
It's too tied to the state legislator. Like you literally will have to get the legislator to, which is made up of the two parties, to agree to have another party.
Well, I mean, the parties already exist, don't they?
Yeah, but there's rules that don't allow third parties to progress. So, like in Iowa,
Yeah.
I think it's 2.5% of the vote in order to be invited to like a debate. So when you debate Dems or Republicans, if you didn't receive 2.5% of the vote in the general election, then you're not invited to the debate. And we did not receive that this year, or in the general election. So if we don't receive that again during this general election with our governor, then once again, they will not be invited to any of the debates. So how do they even get platformed?
Yeah, so that's true. There are definitely setbacks. A couple of years back, when the Republicans in Arizona made it much more difficult for third parties to get on the ballot because they thought the Libertarians were costing them too many votes, and since then we haven't been able to reach their new threshold to get the candidate on the ballot. However, I think that's a temporary setback. Like, if you can change public opinion, these goals aren't like so far out of the reach, like 2.5%, 5%. Well, I mean, we've gotten more than that in federal elections before. It's not impossible that we can do it again. And once we can make that progress, and also I say libertarian, but for those of you who are to the left, just imagine I'm saying Green Party or Socialist Party. Okay, so like it can work, right? If you can change the public opinion, electoral victories will follow, right? Like, if 90%, think of it this way, if 90% of people agreed with you, no amount of systemic barriers could fucking stop you from writing into the Oval Office. So you just got to change public opinion.
It's literally what we're trying to fix right now, just on a legislation level. We can't seem to do that.
Yeah, I mean, so a pan, but this is the problem. You're saying, okay, you just have to change public opinion. Oh, sure. But then you actually have to then build an entire organizational framework to actually exercise any power, right? So, like, wouldn't it make sense that within the party system that we have, that you simply shift those parties to whatever your priorities are, rather than trying to start from scratch and forcing in another party. This again why the presidential candidate that had the best chance of running independently or through a third party, right, was Bernie Sanders. He didn't do it. Why? Because he knows this shit's going to be impossible. That he wouldn't have done as well as he did outside, and he wouldn't have done as well as he did inside a hostile Democratic Party, right? Outside of that, right? Like, so.
Well, I
hold on.
I kind of get what you're saying, but
Can I add one thing there? So
sure, you
parties
can add
still
one thing first.
Yeah, sorry. So, in order to pass legislation, you have to caucus within your party. So, if you're registered as a third party, you're not going to be able to caucus with Dem or Republicans. You're not going to get assigned committee meetings or committee assignments. Like it sucks that that's how it is, um, but that's how it is.
Yeah, I definitely. Of course, you have to start local. But what I was going to say about moving the parties in your direction, doing that from a third party is actually a way that you can do it, because the party knows that those votes are up for grabs, and by altering their policy, that they can, pick up more votes in future elections. If you vote for them, no matter what, they don't give a shit about your policy preferences because you voted for them. The only way to get them to move towards you is withholding your vote. And we've seen stuff like this in 1992. Ross Perot, basically, he ran as a third party candidate. And guess what happened? Bill Clinton, the eventual winner, picked up virtually all of his platform. So, yes, running as a third party, even if you lose, can get major parties to accept your policies.
That is not the only way to do it. Now, just...
Not the only, sorry, but it is a way.
It is a way, right? But it's not the most effective way. The most effective way is through the primary system. That is the most effective. Chuck Schumer has been acting strange lately because he thought he was going to get primary. He was afraid of a primary from AOC. Which unfortunately did not happen, and so that you'll see Chuck Schumer revert back to his old ways. But like that is the way to do it. That's how Republicans did it, right? Like there was a Tea Party revolution. People were scared, by that politicians were scared, and there was actual consequences, right? People lost seats, right? And the party, and they fought, right? At first the leadership, right, didn't like what they were hearing, didn't want to be a part of it, right? John Boehner fought against it, right, until they asserted their dominance, and Boehner got down on all fours and begged for forgiveness. Like that's what happened. That's
the Tea Party is effectively dead at this point, because it's gone back to the Republicans. So all of that work the Tea Party did, I don't agree with a lot of it, especially the social conservative stuff. But about the economic, some of the fiscally conservative stuff, no, the Republican Party is way further economic. Like they're way more into big government now than they were in 2008. The Tea Party was completely a failure in terms of trying to make government smaller, because as soon as Trump got in, well, all of that went by the wayside. Like they completely failed to change the Republican Party substantially in the long term. It just went back to normal after, or arguably worse than normal, after 8 years of Obama. They just went back to Trump.
Okay, so I think we have a disagreement on what exactly the Tea Party thought it was accomplishing, and then what was actually accomplishing. If you think the Tea Party was a waste. Okay, well that's a larger conversation. But the point is that the party shifted, like the priorities of the party shifted. You can say it was temporarily or not, whatever, right? We can have that other fight at some other time. But like it shifted their priorities. It was the talk of the town. Like when was Nancy Pelosi like the most shaken up, right? It was when AOC won, right? When someone got primaried out, and then they couldn't believe it. They lost their minds. How could this happen? Joe Crowley was such a good guy. He was one of ours. I mean, the guy was nothing but corporate. The guy didn't live in his district. He didn't give a shit, right? Like this guy did nothing, and they were shocked. Why would those people not elect one of ours again, right? Like that's the thing that scares them, is losing their seats. It's got to be the primary system, and it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter if it's within a safe a safe blue seat, right? That doesn't matter. People are like criticizing Justice Democrats because they're mostly operating in safe blue seats. No, if you the point is to shift the party, right? And that happens no matter what seat you get, right? As long as it's a seat that progressives are taking from a corporate or just a standard bog Democrat, right? Then you're making progress and you're putting the fear of God into them. That's the way you do it, not by trying to create an entirely new organizational framework, right? Starting from literally the bottom and building up like a new party and trying to find a way between the two that existing ones that will keep you out in the way Amanda has helpfully illustrated.
Sure, if you have the political power to win an election against one of the major parties, yeah, then maybe, like, I mean, if you have that amount of political power that you can actually beat a major party incumbent
problem is,
candidate,
how
then
do you
yeah,
get
that's
that
probably
political
right.
power?
But exactly, how do you
Yeah.
get to that political
Can't.
power?
That's my point.
You literally cannot.
have
Like
to-
I
well,
would
The
build
love it.
up
legislator,
from
the
the-
state legislator does
impossible.
not allow it. Like,
You
You have to build up from the bottom.
Wait,
What
wait.
does
Who
that
do you have to
mean?
convince?
But the problem is that like every state is entirely different. Like every single state. So if you even want to have like a third party, like let's call it the Green, is there a GNC?
There's a Green Party. Yeah.
Yeah,
What about
okay.
the Forward Party?
Oh god.
True. What about the Forward Party? I think we're
That's good. That's gonna go so well. That totally isn't a grift to just get more money in Yang's pocket. Like that's what all these third parties are. They're like little ego pet projects for the people who are running them. Right? It's absurd. It's never going to work in this country. Like because the parties that are already in power have a vested interest in not changing the rules to make it easy for them. The best they're going to do is what Prime says. You find people who are not even doing like lip service to their district, who think that they're safe, who have been there for a long time, or like Kristen Sinema, who made a bunch of promises that she is not following through on, and you primary them. In addition to that, you look for Republicans who have weak seats, and you run hopefully further left Democrats, or at least as far left as you can get away with in that state, against them. That way we have more of a majority, and the corporate Democrats that we do have in Congress have less sway to be like, well, it's 50-50, so you better convince me now. Like, I don't want to have to think about Joe Manchin's opinion. I really don't. Easiest way to do that, get more Democrats in the Senate.
I really like how the New York does their third parties, where you can well, it's not even third party, oh my goodness, like Working Families Party, they're still like Democrat, but you can the candidates can register as both Dems, Working Families Party, just as Democrats. So if you want to have a third party, then please go change those laws to be more like New York before we have like all these discussions on how to do it, because that's the only way that you can do
I
it.
completely agree.
So
And
I
like,
wanted to
also,
point
doesn't
something
New
out
York
though
have ranked choice?
about this third party thing. Okay, and it was kind of hit on a little bit, but Kirsten Sinema, who made all these promises, right? The reason that she made those promises, the reason that she went as progressive as she did, is because there was a candidate for the Green Party named Angela Green that was running on the ballot and really would have destroyed her chances of winning because she was sucking votes away from the more progressive populace here. Kirsten Sinema struck a deal with Angela Green that she would put so many of those progressive priorities into her platform. My point is that even though she put those into her platform, she reneged on all of them. So the third party didn't really do a fucking goddamn thing. They didn't do anything. They were completely ineffective. They would have been better off having somebody to the left of Sinema run against her in a primary.
Yes, like that's why they just like these people are just ideologues. They don't want to affect political change. They want to pretend like, oh well, I pushed the actual party to the left, but even that doesn't happen because all they have to do is lie. And
but
they're
that's the
very
opposite of
easy
what
to do
Jason
it.
is saying. He's saying that first they need to show that they mean business and keep the running.
No,
If they had
no,
affected the
you
election,
totally misunderstood what he just said. They didn't affect the election, is what he just said. He said
he didn't.
He said they didn't do a damn thing. No, they couldn't
because
have.
they agreed and they tried
All
to
they
do
would
it
have done
from
is
within the
siphon
party.
off votes from the Democrats. That's not affecting the
what
election.
happens-
That's giving it to Republicans, dude.
Okay, but what happens when you lose an election because you don't appeal to a voter base? You appeal to
A
that voter
Republican,
base next time.
another Republican is in the Senate. We don't even have a majority. So, woo, awesome. Thanks,
okay,
third parties.
Are you under the impression that there are like a majority of independent voters? Because I mean, literally, like
no.
okay,
I mean,
good, thank God.
independent voters are very, very partisan, right? I think like despite calling themselves independent, you can't tell a left-leaning independent from a Democrat if you ask them about policy issues. So I'm pretty sure, that whole there's actually more independents than any other party. Yeah, that's complete bullshit.
Yeah, independents have high partisan scores with their voting patterns, so they typically, you're right.
Yeah, just as high. Yeah, no, I'm not under that. That's obviously not true. I wish it was true, but
yeah, third parties suck. They just take away votes from the actual parties that those candidates should be running in if they want to affect actual change. And anybody that supports them is an ideologue, and I don't have time for you and can't take you seriously. That's where I stand on that. Sorry.
I mean, look, you can stand on that. I mean, it's just not true, though. We've seen it in the past.
What do they do? Wait, when in the past have they done anything? What have they done?
Literally take a look at Ross Perot. Okay, that's probably the biggest example in recent history of a third party making a huge effect on what a major party's political beliefs are.
Early 90s,
take a look
recent
at
history.
It did the opposite of what we were talking about here. But you're absolutely right. It pushed the Democrat Party to the right.
Right, yeah. But my point is that third parties can push it. No, but my point is that third parties can push it, right? Like third party pushed it in a different way. But my point is it doesn't have to be. It's not intrinsically that third parties will push him to the right. The reason it went to the right because, well, the vision that Ross Perot wanted was more to the right of the average Democrats. But it would work the same way towards the left.
It never has. Tell me one time it did.
It did. I mean, it didn't work, but Al Gore should have won that election. And if he had, we know what he did for the time afterwards, right? But that was what's his name? The guy from the Northwest, the guy that's unsafe.
Ralph Nader.
Well, why did Al Gore not win that election? Do you think that if
Nader Republicans
stole okay, but if Nader, I understand that some sketchy shit happened in Florida, right? Yeah, but if Nader hadn't ran at all, that sketchy shit in Florida wouldn't have mattered, and Al Gore would have won, and we never had to deal with Bush. So again, that is a third party giving the election to Democrats.
It pushed Al Gore,
Republicans,
into the belief that climate change was like the number one crisis in the country. Like if he
which is great, but he still lost because of them.
No, it wasn't because of him. It wasn't because of him at all.
Yeah, the votes that Ralph Nader received would have pushed Al Gore over.
Yeah, but now you're back to like polling the whole country, right? Like it's like, yeah, sure, those votes would have made a difference, but they were in Washington State where it didn't make a difference.
Are you? No, okay. I would have to look at. Yeah, you're right. I would have to look at like support for Nader in Florida.
I don't think he was on the ballot. I'm pretty sure he wasn't.
Yeah, additionally, I mean, this happens like both ways, right? Like, I remember for example, in 2020, there was so much Republican hate for libertarians because in a lot of states, the margin of victory for Biden was greater than the amount, or was less than the amount of votes that Joe Jorgensen, the candidate, got. So like, it kind of works both ways. And yes, it's true, but I mean, look, if the major party doesn't represent your beliefs, there's no reason why you shouldn't go for a long-term strategy of trying to change it rather than just going election by election and voting for loser candidates that don't represent you, right? Like, I think a chance in the future is worth more than no chance in the future, but slightly worse things happening now.
By the way, I just looked it up. Nader was on the ballot, and he received 97,000 votes in Florida, which would have been enough for Gore to win. So, yeah, again, third party cost the election. There you go.
Fair enough. I mean, but still, like the outcome of that, right? Like, notwithstanding, the facts is that like they had some effect on the race, right? Like they moved Al Gore to the left in ways that did the exact opposite of Ross Perot.
So hot.
Yeah, I didn't know that that's the reason he was all big on climate change.
I'll tell you where a third party can be instrumental. A third party that does not run candidates like the DSA, who instead advocates for policies and advocates for the two-party system candidates and says, you know what, the DSA endorses X candidate. The best thing that you can get from a third party is they can act as an outside pressure group. And they can do that. They can make change through being an outside pressure group, through pushing policy prescriptions, through pushing candidates that are within the two-party system that align most closely with their belief systems, right? That does work.
I'm sorry.
That kind of advocacy works.
if they're saying, "Hey, we're not going to run candidates because we're going to vote for Democrats anyways," they have no power.
No,
There's
what are you
literally
talking
nothing
about,
they
DSA
can
dude?
has
possibly
They have a
immense power.
tremendous
What are
amount
you
of power.
talking about?
Yes, they do on the local
they?
level. Are you kidding me? Here in
Okay,
Austin, they
well,
got the
no, on
police
the local
defunded.
level.
Dude, like they got homelessness decriminalized. Like, yeah, like this is, and the DSA can support candidates and get people to vote for them. And like the Communist Party of the USA, it endorsed Biden. So like even they seem to understand that this is how you do it, right? Like he's absolutely correct.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough
Third
about
party,
the DSA. I'll
third
admit.
party organizations should not be running candidates. Instead, they should be pressuring candidates and supporting them, like with good policy prescriptions and also direct action. That way, they can grow the movement by helping people. Like that is how like
maybe
you do it.
there's
not
an asymmetry.
running.
Yeah, that's possible.
Running is like an exercise in, like I said, narcissism and just self gratification.
That's possible. Maybe
Well,
there's
then
an
make third parties more popular.
asymmetry.
Yeah, and to the point I was trying to make, the reason that Biden even went as far with medical stuff as he did, granted the ACA is definitely not what most of us wanted, is not what the DSA wanted, but the DSA fucking promoted that shit, and they put weight behind it because they're like, if this is the best we're gonna get, we're gonna throw our fucking weight behind it, and we're gonna advocate for this policy prescription, and they had a big enough movement and a big enough drive to help push that over the edge. So yes, absolutely. As an outside pressure group, third parties are instrumental. I don't agree with getting rid of them. I just don't think that they should run candidates. That's my long and short of it.
Yeah,
And maybe on the local level, you
Please.
can do it on the local level. You know, do it for like your county board members, board of supervisors. You could do it for city council members. You could do it for school board, things like that. And yes, DSA members can, on the local level, get some of what they want done. And sometimes the bigger parties pick up on that and absorb those policy prescriptions where they've seen that it's been tested and it works on the local level. So yes, there are ways to do it, but yeah, I don't think running federal candidates or even statewide running candidates in statewide elections is fruitful for any third party, nor is it fruitful for the people who would benefit for the policies that they're pushing. Yeah, but totally in that aspect of things, in the outside pressure group things, in being able to lobby for things, absolutely. Local level, those areas, yeah, absolutely. And then maybe if you get enough on a local level, maybe if your grassroots spreads far enough on a local level, then at that time there's room for running for a statewide election, something like that. But you got to at least have those people in a position of power in that municipality, in that region, in that district, in that state before you can do that. And that takes a lot of work. I don't think it should be completely abandoned, but the people that want to do that need to realize that's a 30-year fucking project. It's a 30-year project minimum, because you've got to get enough people in that party on the local level in order to give them the power that they need to execute further.
Also, outside of that, getting a socialist on your city council is going to have much more of an effect on your community's conditions and what's happening there than whoever the president happens to be. And it can lead to that person starting a political career, like Bernie Sanders started off as the mayor of Burlington, right? And eventually now he's grown the left more than pretty much any other politician in this country. Yeah, that's what third parties can focus on if they want. But this idea that we're going to...
I want to push back on the Nader point.
Wait, hold on.
I want to put
Bernie third party. Doesn't he run as independent?
He caucuses
from outside. I know he caucuses with the Democrats.
And I think he's full Democrat at this point because he's Democratic leadership at this point. Anyway,
he joined.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when he started though, he was not a major party candidate.
The whole thing.
No, he was
elected to the Senate as a non-major party candidate, right?
As an independent, what he would do?
Hold on. I want to make my point. So the whole thing about Nader, I think that's a problem. And the way we look at third parties, one, like you said, there's 97,000 votes, and one of votes have swung the election. But would we have gotten those 97,000 votes? Look at someone who's bad as decision making as Problematic Pan here. Problematic Pan here is a third party voter, right? And if you had taken away that third party that he believes in so much for some fucking reason, right? Does that necessarily mean that he would have switched to the party that is nominally closer to his positions, right? Or just not vote at all? See, throw up his hands, and say, "Well, no one's representing me," like so much of our country does. So many people don't vote at all, right? Will we simply get
I
to
To be
agree.
fair, I would have done that, but it
Hold
might
on.
be a little bit different on the left.
I
Right?
agree.
Because there's no party close to me, but if you're like a socialist, the Democrat Party is marginally closer to you.
I agree with what Jason said. If the third party is, instead of trying to run a candidate, but supports a candidate and tells people to go out and vote for that candidate and then support their candidates on the local level, like if Ralph Nader's party had done that, then those people would have voted for Gore. And
I
Well,
also
if
I want
I've
to
got
hold
an
on. I want
idea,
to point
if
out during the
well, I
Georgia
just,
Senate runoff election, there was a local, the Georgia Public Service Commissioner was also up for election, and literally no one was talking about that. The Georgia Public Service Commissioner could have gotten funding to their state so much faster than obviously at federal level, and he lost by 3%, which was the makeup of the Libertarian Party, which took the votes.
based.
yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I'm more than
that's my
happy to.
the only third party that I support in this country is the Libertarian Party. Actually,
Well,
that
thank
one
you.
can
Very
stay.
much appreciated.
Just keep on taking those Republican votes, buddy.
More than
No,
happy
Hey,
to.
no, no, no,
Now,
no, no, no.
I will say,
No, he took the votes from Daniel Blackman, who was a Democrat, and ended up the Republican winning, and Georgians are still
wait,
fine.
what
Well,
makes you
they-
think the
they-
Libertarians would have voted for the Democrat?
It's definitely more complicated than that. I understand, but
But no, please do explain that, because I'm confused as to how they're thinking that Libertarians cost a Democrat the election.
it's just more of the base and getting people out to vote. When there's obviously another option, you're going to take votes from both parties.
But disproportionately, they'd be taking votes from Republicans, I would think. That's usually what happens with Libertarians, no?
I mean, it'd be pretty close to like it'd be pretty close. They'd probably split relatively evenly, I'd imagine.
Well, you got to remember, if they have conservative Democrats, i.e., Kirsten Sinema here, who are, socially liberal but fiscally conservative, even if you're a Democrat, maybe the Libertarian Party looks more enticing to you.
Well, Kristen Sinema's not a libertarian. She's a neoliberal. She's for austerity measures and lower taxes on businesses, right? That's very different than libertarians. Like, they're just... Never mind. I'm going to be nice to Pan.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
They're basically they're diet ANCAPs, and their ideas are ridiculous. But
Not,
I mean,
not
I
even
get
close
it.
to true.
Whatever.
ANCAPs and libertarians come from completely different philosophical backings. But I don't want to bring this to a fucking ANCAP.
No, I'm not going to have an ideology discussion.
Yeah,
right
Fabian
now.
Liberty isn't here, so we shouldn't have this conversation.
Well, we shouldn't have that conversation even when he is here. We should just not have the conversation. It's a very boring conversation.
Okay.
There's something we agree on, Pan.
Okay, so something I wanted to ask Amanda.
Wait, I had something I wanted to say
Okay,
before
fine.
Amanda so rudely interrupted me earlier. That if it's really a problem that third-party candidates are stealing votes from major party candidates and it's costing elections, it seems like that'd be a really good reason to support like ranked choice voting. And I think with ranked choice, like increasing the amount of ranked choice voting would make it a lot easier for third parties to not ruin elections for major party candidates, which is why, like, from what I think, third party candidates should be trying to do that first and foremost, because it gets rid of the major opposition that people have to third parties, like, oh, well, I'll just cost the election. And at the same time, it makes it so that, I don't know, they don't spoil
Pan,
elections.
because you're in Arizona, I am a part of a group that's pushing for ranked choice voting. I can send you some of their information.
Yeah, sure.
They are really trying to build up steam for it, and it seems like we're getting a lot of good feedback. So I'll kick you over the information through chat or something.
Yeah, of course. I'd definitely be down for that.
There's more that has to change than just ranked choice voting to make third parties viable, though. Like,
sure, but what you guys are saying is that third parties are bad because they can cost elections. Well, here's the solution: third parties don't have to cost elections anymore.
I don't think they're going to fall for that one, but I mean, we
can
try
fall for that one.
Like the Democrats and the Republicans do. They don't want to give third parties any more power because they don't want them. Like, they'll just keep on doing what they did for the most part, right? Except for, like, I know Maine got it. It's awesome that Arizona's talking about it. But in most states, they just like sued the Green Party off the ballot where they could, dude. Like, they're gonna gut it as much as they can. Like, you can't take away power from the power structure that already exists, like with third parties advocating for something.
Well, then how did it get passed in New York?
again, in certain like more left-leaning states like Maine, New York, like apparently Arizona's looking at it now. Like you can do this, and
Right,
obviously,
but they're a major party, right? So shouldn't they also be against it? Like, shouldn't they not want it passed?
I'm sure that most of them were, and then some of them probably agreed with you that it'll keep them from siphoning off votes from their like party.
Well, why couldn't that happen with Republicans too, who are worried about the votes?
Again, like I don't think that this is something that they're going to agree to. I think that they look at ranked choice voting as trying to give third parties more power. I think that the major parties in most states are scared of it. I think that they're perfectly satisfied with the solution of just suing these parties off the ballots where they can. And in other places, yeah, they'll let ranked choice voting go through, but it won't go through nationally. You'll never get it passed like in every state.
Well, yeah, and that's the problem that you have is the FEC is made up of Democrats and Republicans exclusively. There is not one independent on the Federal Elections Commission. Okay, they are the ones that set these thresholds. They are the ones that determine how third parties are going to be treated. And if they don't, if a third party doesn't have a voice on the FEC, well, yeah, there's no hope, and nobody's ever going to appoint a third party person to the FEC for the sole purpose of maintaining that two party system.
The FEC,
They won't want to put it up there.
the FEC doesn't even work right now. Like everybody's forgetting. Like as far as I know, Biden hasn't appointed anybody to take the roles up, and they don't have a quorum. They haven't been able to do anything for 6 years now. They had to sit on the sidelines for all of the Trump election too.
Them being ineffective though is a strategy.
Well,
that's
I mean,
the strategy.
They're nothing. There's essentially nobody there. They don't have a quorum. They can't meet. They can't rule. They can't do any business. They can't do anything. They don't have a budget. They haven't approved anything. Like the lights are off. Like
No, I know. You're making my point for me. The system, the two-party system, doesn't want the FEC to work appropriately.
Of course it doesn't. Of
They
course
don't even. That's why they don't want an independent or a third party on the FEC, because as soon as that happens, shit changes and the power structure changes. So
Yeah. You can't have a
keeping
third
the
party.
keeping the FEC with the lights off and not giving them what they need to create a quorum, not giving them third party people or people outside the beltway on the board is totally by design.
So
Of course.
Yeah, nobody's advocating for pushing the Democrats left because we think it'll be easy or even that it's possible. We're advocating for it because it's literally the only option.
Amanda, you want to say something?
I was just going to bring up a conversation that we had, Prime, in regards to how our system is pretty much set up to continually allow people that want power to get power. You explained it much better, but
Have power to get.
do you remember that conversation?
I'm sure I said something brilliant. Could you try to remind me, jog my memory a little bit?
Yeah,
That's kind of rude that you don't remember.
just that like the way our political system is set up to continually allow people like that want power to maintain power. And so it's really hard to change that because those that are in power are the ones that have to make those changes and they don't want to let it go.
Yeah, that sounds like something I would say. So I don't remember the conversation.
No, but I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I think that we just disagree that it's insurmountable.
Yeah. So, Amanda, so before you were saying that organizing is very difficult, and it's difficult to mobilize individuals. If you had, if you're a queen for a day, right? But usually it probably should be more than one day. But queen for a day, what changes would you make to make organizing easier, right? Within our democratic system, which weirdly has a queen. Sorry, go ahead.
I think most issues come down to the fact that we just absolutely need more resources, whether that's supportive resources or financial resources. They're just not out there, so people can't get engaged because, um, like I said at the beginning, we are working full-time jobs. We're exhausted. There's not much that we can do outside of that. So I guess, oh, there's so much I would change. One of the issues that I have is particularly with messaging and language and the way that we talk about issues. Yeah, I don't know. It's so individualized. I was the other night, like I don't when I get asked these questions, like I need to have like a direct demographic and have it completely tailored down in order to know how to fix it. Like how I want to fix something in Iowa is going to be completely different to how I want to fix it in California or how I want to fix it in New York. And I need these details in order to provide an answer.
Mm. Well, I guess I would start with automatic voter registration. The fact that this is a thing that people have to do, people like you have to spend time on, is a fucking waste, right? Was it Oregon?
There you go.
Yeah.
That's so base. Yes, totally. That not only automatic voter registration, but everyone can mail in their own ballot. Also, hand marked paper ballots are the most secure way of voting. So yeah, I don't know why we don't mail out ballots and allow for more time. Like I was explaining at the beginning, Iowa went from like 90 days of mailed in paper ballots to 45. Not only did that, they no longer allow us to fill out their voter information. So people have to like know that themselves. So when they mail it in, if it's wrong, we have to try to fix it, like figure it out that it's wrong, fix it, call them up. So yeah, whole bunch of stuff to do with voter registration.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that would be one way to start to change the system actually for the better. So, all back voter registration. I guess what else would I would do? Um, I mean, changing the days for voters, changing the voting days. I guess that would be another thing. But um, when organizing, right? I guess organizing it comes on many different levels. So you'd want to organize not just during elections, right? Like once you're organizing just during elections, like I think it's a bit too late. And something I guess you were going for previously, Amanda, saying that you have to have this continuous dialogue. But what does that even look like, right? So we can like tell voters like year round, this is what we want, right? This is how we'd like to advance your lives, but not it doesn't work if we're actually not actually doing something and getting them involved. So more than simply like going out and telling other people about the Democratic Party, right? I guess something that would be more effective would be like when these strikes happen, right? To be backing them, to be seeing Democratic candidates there, or Democratic elected officials too, there, and fighting with them, bringing attention to their strikes rather than just ignoring the people, right? So like you got those people in West Virginia, like Revolt Rise was talking about, right? During those strikes, there should be people on the ground. Not and it could just be like people who are involved with the machine of the Democratic Party. It's like, okay, this is the resources we're going to bring to bear for this, right? That would like change hearts and minds. Republicans aren't going to fucking do that. They literally don't give a shit. And this is open territory for us. Just like be there and be supporting these workers, right? Not just lip service. That's one way of showing actual solidarity, right? And you don't have to get a fucking piece of legislation passed to do it. Nothing, right? So you can continue to fail in the Senate, but you could actually make a difference in lives. And then people the next time that an election is around, like, oh yeah, I know those people. I know names of people in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party isn't something theoretical, right? Like I know those guys. They were there when we had that strike, right? They provided resources, but we were close to falling apart. But they came in and they helped us out. You know what? Let me take a look at that candidate. Let me knock on some doors. They helped us out. I think that's
the thing. The thing is that the way that unions, like I said, Trump actually like got a fair bit of the union vote, almost 50%. And the reason for that is that unions basically tell their workers, hey, the Republicans are going to help the stock market, right? And your pension is tied to the stock market. So you better vote for Trump if you want to be able to retire. And that's how they pitch it every time. Now, I agree that it'd be awesome if we went out and helped these people strike, but I don't think that trying to pitch them the Democratic Party on the picket line is going to work out well. I think that labor action should be kept as separate
I feel like
from
that's a great
electoral
opportunity to pitch it.
Union member leadership that was 50% in favor of Trump.
No, I just sent you the Politico article in the chat a few minutes ago, dude. Like it's the rank and file workers specifically. Like you can look at that data from Politico. rank and file union members snub
Well, I
Biden
think-
for Trump.
No,
Like, go.
yeah,
I don't know what
Probably
to
the
tell you.
reason for that is for social issues, right? I don't think that's done for economic issues. At least it might be in the Rust Belt because there they really don't like the open trade policies. But I think especially
that's
for unions in the South, it's probably because of social issues rather than economic issues.
Yes,
like
but
striking
also
and stuff.
because but also because Republicans care about like them only. They don't care about like everybody else. Like they're very much about like I got mine, personal responsibility, right? So as long as their union like gets them what they need, they don't really care about like supporting the Democrats beyond that point because it like leads to better things for them. And frankly, it doesn't most of the time. I haven't seen the Democrats do anything for unions in a very long time.
Okay, but this is specifically the building trades unions. Like this isn't all unions. This
So-
is a certain subsect of unions, and Biden still edges out Trump 48% to 47. While it's not a lot,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's an even split. Like, basically.
No, you got completely debunked, Spectre. There's a huge fucking gap.
Yeah, I'm sure the margin of error is not possibly over 1%. But like, look, if I just think that it would probably be better to support labor action as supporting labor action and not possibly risk poisoning it with electoral politics than it would be to try and use it as a way to spread like support for the Democrats. I'd much rather see that we just like spread support for unionization in general because that helps the working class. Because frankly, I want Republican workers to get higher wages and benefits too. I want it for like everybody in this country, and we do that by like supporting unions.
Yeah. But so even if the union like doesn't support Democrats, I think that's even more reason to go out there and help them, right?
Yeah, no, I'm supporting that, but I'm saying that I thought you were saying it as a way to like convince them to vote Democrat in the future, and I don't see how that happens.
But by like give them support, by like that's an opportunity, right? So we have these these voters, right, who don't support you. Well, you know where they are. Where are they at? They're on the picket line, right? They are marching around and fighting for their rights. So you go there, like, okay, let's provide you resources to actually make this strike successful. And along the way, you give them education, right? If it's for cultural reasons, I'm not exactly sure why. I didn't get the chance to read your article. But I'm not exactly sure why these people are supporting Trump. Well, let's say it's for cultural reasons. Then you introduce issues that they're going to agree with, like don't fight them on cultural issues. Like, okay, sure, or abortion, that's a good enough. Oh, and gays, right? Yeah, I know you guys hate those, but let's not talk about that. Let's talk about putting money in your pocket. Here's a list of priorities that we have, right? Like, when have you heard of the Republican Party fighting for these, right? When have you heard of them fighting for unions in general, right? And just let them know that, let them understand all that. And I think you can move individuals. Not, I don't know how many, but it doesn't matter, right? You're making connections, that, and maybe people, and then you say like, okay, here's my number, right? Give it to like the union leader. Like, you got an issue, you let me know. Like, that means something, right?
Yes, but like the majority of the country, like the majority of the electorate isn't in a union, so trying to focus on getting them to vote one way or another is just not in the interest of like the major part. No,
Wait,
one
I'm
thing
sorry,
that you
just
could
'cause
do.
they're not in the majority doesn't mean
Okay,
they're not
hold
an
on,
important
hold
voting
on,
bloc.
hold on. Yes, they are. I understand that, right? Now, one thing that I just thought of that you could like perhaps do, like at a legislative level, not even just like sending them money, right? Is something that Biden discussed for a little bit, which is repeal right to work laws. Make it to where these unions can have actual closed shops again. Because that will improve their negotiating power, and the party that does that will probably actually siphon off a fair bit of electoral support. So it is an important voting bloc. I don't think that it's the end-all be-all solution to like flip things to the left, but yeah, if you wanted to actually make it to where unions can say, if you want to work here, you have to be a member of our union. That way they have more negotiating power. Yeah, you could probably flip some people from Republican to Democrat that way.
Awesome point. Everyone should say fuck the right to work laws in their state.
Yeah, no,
safe
that-
as fuck.
Yeah, right to work laws are garbage.
it's literally anti-free market, right? Because they're basically saying that if I, as a private citizen, want to make a contract with my boss that if somebody wants to work here, they have to be a member of my union. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I think to be fair, the reason for that is because Yellow Book laws are also, or I forget the exact name, but laws making it so that employers aren't allowed to hire only non-union members. That's a restriction on the free market, but it's on both sides, right? Both unions and employers aren't able to keep the other out. I think that's the logic for the argument. So if you want to get rid of the
no, it's
Texas only
not.
has one side
It's
of
not?
that law.
Yeah, they only have one side right now, and it's the one that we don't like. So like,
That's not true. The yellow dog laws, or not yellow. I need to look up the name of the policy, but it ever since like the New Deal, I think it's been, you can't just refuse employment based on union status. You can't refuse to work with union.
That's true. They can't refuse to work with unions, but like we have what is it? It's right to work, and what's the other one? Somebody help me out quick.
Right. Well, right to work just means that like you don't have to join a union. Or
exactly. And the point of that though is that like it cuts labor. That's like union power, right? Like now people can join the union, so work in a shop and they're non-union, right? And you don't have to give them the same contract as the union has.
it kills unions. That's what it was designed to do, and it was very successful. Union membership has dropped quite a bit since that law was passed. So again, if you want to be like the party that gets union support, just take away the right to work laws. Make it to where they can actually tell their employers, like, yeah, fuck you. We'll go on strike unless you sign this contract, and this contract says that you have to like only hire people that are willing to join our union.